So let's call this meeting to order. So I'm Vincent Piccirilli, I'm the chair of the committee. Tony's my vice chair. People can just go around and introduce themselves.
Tony Palumbo, vice chair of the committee.
Elliot Friedman, Church Street resident.
Pete Santola, resident, 25 Thurston Road, Watertown, recreation director.
Mike Layup, director of athletics at high school.
Elodia Thomas, 67 Marion Road, abutter.
Stephen Goon, Community Development Planning Director and Assistant Town Manager.
Mark Leonard with Watertown Youth Sports, Watertown Youth Soccer.
Ann Cordy, 48 Catherine Road, abutter.
This meeting is being recorded by cable TV, so just so you know, when you speak, it will be recorded and it will be online for you to watch it later. The couple of things for the committee, I sent around all the correspondence received as of midnight last night, so I have a hard copy for each of you just to look at. Always some great comments from the public. The other thing is that we sent around the material on the storage shed materials and the basketball court dimensions. We're actually not going to talk about that tonight. Tonight we're going to stick to the agenda, which is the parking area and the driveway and the lighting. So those are the two things we're going to be talking about tonight. We so you know, when we get to the appropriate point, we'll let the public speak on the issues. We ask you to identify yourself, your name, the street you live on, or your affiliation, and try to keep it brief so that everybody gets a chance to talk. For both the committee and for the public, you know, we ask, don't interrupt when other people are talking. If you want to speak, just raise your hand and I will recognize you. So just meetings are a lot more smoothly if we do it that way. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from July 25th. So does anybody have any comments or corrections? Elodia first.
It's just on page 1, Vinny, of 15. I just want to change the last line and from "and advise that while 8 lanes may be desired, most high schools have 6 lanes."
That.
Because as you saw from my handout, out of 12 schools in the Middlesex League, 8 have 6 lanes, 4 have.
So when 8 lanes, while 8 lanes are.
It's from the advice point.
Okay.
That while 8 lanes may be desired, if you go to this new standards that you see out there, most high schools have 6 lanes. So just.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Ann?
Yes, page 13, there was a comment that I had made that was inaccurate about the size. I was not ever in favor of reducing the size of the basketball court to middle school standard.
You talk about the line and making the basketball.
High size.
Okay. Would you want to just delete that last sentence, or what? I don't know what.
I don't know, I think,
I think that would be.
I don't, I was never in favor of the junior school. I was in favor of reducing the excess around if necessary, but not,
The buffer zone.
but not changing the regulation, the size for.
Okay. Okay, so I will delete that. Anybody else?
Move we accept the minutes as amended.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we also, and if anybody hasn't signed in, before you leave, you fill in the sign-up sheet. There's a sign-up sheet here, so that would be
Free.
good. So we have a guy from Musco. What's your name? Mike Mahoney from Musco. I'd like to ask the committee, we had parking area and driveways the first item, but I was wondering if we could flip that and do the lighting first, so that Mr. Mahoney could,
You don't want to be here till.
we don't have to keep him through an hour of discussion about parking lots. So is the committee in favor of that, to swap the two agenda items and take up lighting first?
Yes.
Sounds good.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. So, just so you all know, we'll take up the lighting first. Okay, so let's break the lighting down to two pieces. So the good thing about the lighting, I gave everybody a copy of, I thought it would be helpful for tonight's discussion. I thought I had a copy. Oh, here it is. I actually went down to the field and just did a quick sketch of all the existing lighting that is at the field, both in the courts as well as the track. There's a couple of extra copies here if people want them, or they could just go down there and look at it. So there's, around the track, there's N-Star lighting. So these are security floodlights. They're actually directly wired into the N-Star grid. They don't go through a town meter. We pay them by the month. So that's basically what surrounds the track. There's the poles on the court, and then two of the poles on the tennis courts have two floodlights that shine towards the track, two small floodlights. They're actually on the town's electric system through the meter. So just helpful when we have the discussion to, you can have that. Let's start with the court. Perhaps that would be easier to break into the court lighting, and then we can talk about the field lighting. Does that make sense to everybody? Sure. So as everybody knows, on the courts, on the 5 tennis courts and the basketball court, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 lighting poles. They have 2, 3, or 4 flood lights on them. You'll see I wrote the number of flood lamps on them. And where do we want to start? I guess there's been a lot of desire in the community to reduce the amount of glare and spillover from those court lights into the neighboring residences. And just so you know, here, there's people's backyards along the back here, and there are poles that shine this way as well as this way, like the courts. So one of the things is we talked about is changing the style of lighting on those courts. So, and we had, as you remember from the last meeting on July 10th, we actually had somebody submitted some suggestions on a
Great suggestions.
different style of lighting fixture. So, and who wants to start? Do you want to, Mark?
Sure. So I guess, certainly around the courts, I don't know if a good starting point would be how we use them today, kind of, because oftentimes I think a lot of people have driven by and they're on and nobody uses it. So how are we, what's the usage today? Kind of when do they come on, when do they turn off? How do you book them to use them if you're using the courts, or are they just always on? I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but I certainly don't.
Okay, maybe Peter could.
Basically, those lights in the tennis courts were built in the early 70s. They're archaic. The system that is included there is archaic. It's very tough to, have a meter on them. So presently they're on all the time. They're on when it rains. They're on when there's a hurricane. And it's unfortunate, but you can't go in a storm and shut off the lights. That was one of the things we presented in 2014, that we were going to redo the tennis lights, and now the lights are better than 3 years ago. LED, very well focused, and so I think we should be using those. And the way it should be is just like we do Victory Turf as well as some part of Casey, is that they could be automated, timed. But then if there's a storm, are we going to shut them off? The other thing that's going to be nice, I'm sure they're going to talk about, is the newfangled lights that again was brought up in 2014, is where you could, the power would be on, you press the button, the lights go on, and then they'd stay on for a good amount of time. I won't steal the thunder from you, but that's basically it. So.
But just to be clear, so right now they're on a mechanical
A
timer?
mechanical timer, so when it rains, Counselor,
So when do they come on?
they come on, I think give or take, they'll pop on about 7, and DPW does a good job of monitoring. the nice thing about the new system is it comes on daylight savings and then shuts off right at 10. You know, I've gotten plethora of calls, 10:50 and the lights are still on, so the meter is very difficult. So they come on and they're scheduled to go off at 10 o'clock. Sometimes, you know, the time is 10:08, so that's what that happens now.
Okay, so I think maybe if we could break the court lighting into two separate pieces, the type of lighting fixture and then the type of control system. So I think it'd be easier just to break the discussion into those individual pieces. Glenn or Mike?
Yeah.
As
As far as the controls, you want to jump into that?
well, let's talk, we talk about the fixtures first. So why don't you come up here just
Let me,
people
first of all, let me preface this by saying I'm not your Musco representative. I am tonight, covering for a colleague who's on vacation, so I'm not intimately familiar with the project, but I'll do my best to fill you in. This is basically an evolution of lighting control.
Could you go where we can see you?
Everybody?
Yes, that's better, thank you.
That's good enough.
So, based on comments that I heard, you probably have technology out there now that's somewhere in this range, 77.
Earlier.
So, basically, yeah.
On like a 20-foot pole, 25-foot pole.
Okay. This is the technology, the metal halide technology that's currently in place at Victory Field. Okay? And this is the proposed, this is what the LED technology that you'd see in play today. These values, let me back up. Each of these depictions, same height pole, and the fixtures are all aimed at the same angle to a predetermined point on this football field. They're all producing the same amount of light on the playing field. So you can see the minimal impact to the community with the latest technology.
No offense, Mike, that's not what we have on the football field.
Yeah. And again,
This is-
Cool, no,
this
keep going that way.
No,
so let's-
this is the technology on the football field.
so I think we really want to focus right now on the tennis courts.
Okay. Same technology, you know, these values.
We can't see it because of the glare.
Yeah.
Where you were was
Okay.
great.
Yeah, it's okay. It's more important that the committee sees it.
Yes.
Okay, so,
So, previous technology, like such as the metal halide technology at Victory Field, which was installed, I believe, in 2012, the amount of light produced at the edge of the field, measured in candela, is about 11,000. With today's technology, 7 candela, getting the same amount of light on the field. Candela is a measurement of glare, and to give you some perspective, low beam headlights are about 12,000 candela, so that's something our eyes can work with. Bump up to high beam headlights, you're looking at 30 to 40,000 candela, which is what you're experiencing up here. It becomes almost disabling glare. So the biggest difference with LED technology is the reduction and near elimination of glare. So you cannot see the light source itself once you get out of the beam.
if I could ask the question, what's the, we've been talking about foot candles. We can talk in candelas, what the difference is. What is the target ground level illumination in foot candles for the tennis courts?
Tennis courts, typically recreational tennis, 30-foot candles.
The 30-foot candles?
30 horizontal foot candles would be a recreational level of tennis court lighting.
Do we know what we have there today?
I have no idea.
We have no, we do with this. Okay. Question. A foot candle is a measure of brightness. I don't know if you want to talk, and I don't know how many candelas, foot candles to a candela, but,
Well, candela is something you experience. Foot candles are measured. There's only about 3 or 4 candela meters in the United States, So it's not something that you'll ever read in a zoning regulation. What you'll read there is either horizontal or vertical foot candles. But from our perspective, because all we do is lighting, and we do an awful lot of it in neighborhoods where lighting control is very sensitive, we think candle is an important, critical component. There's millions of what we call wall packs on the sides of buildings. You can walk out of here tonight and you look across the street and you'll see a light source. You wouldn't be able to measure the light that source is generating, but it's creating, it's impacting you personally, because you can sense that amount of light or glare. So we feel that addressing glare or candela is a critical component to any lighting design.
Okay, and I just want to point out, the challenge we face here is, we have courts, right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 light poles here that are facing this way. With the property line right here, that's 20 or 30 feet to people's houses. So, there's the glare, if you go a 25-foot pole with fixtures at a 45-degree angle, it creates a lot of glare. And I'm not sure that even a pole with lights like that is going to eliminate that. So one of the things we looked at is box-type light fixtures that would be sort of, the light would shine straight down.
These are zero uplight fixtures. So there is no, all the light goes down. You do not see the light source. You can be on the edge of the court and not see the light source itself.
What's the standard height for a tennis court pole?
Well, it's going to depend on how many courts you choose to light at one time. You've got, so for instance, do you want to be able to, you can light all 6.
5 tennis and
5, so you're going to light all 6 at once, or do you want to break it up and have 3 sections of 2? There's different ways. If one person's there playing basketball, do you really need all 5 tennis courts lit? So the only way to divvy that up is to have multiple poles and break it into sections.
Can I make a comment?
Okay, questions? All right, it's Tony first and then Peter.
Just on the issue of the number of poles, so if we were trying to decrease the number of poles, or limit the number of poles, but get the enough lighting, could we go with 3 poles, 2 on each court? And 1 pole, that covers 2 courts and still get sufficient lighting?
On a tennis court, you're going to need 4 light sources in order to cover, because
one on
there's
each
a
side.
directional,
Let's say that again?
directional
You're
score.
gonna need for each court?
You need 4 sources
For each court?
for each, you could light the whole thing with 4 poles, 2 on each end, but it'd be all on or all off.
Okay, let's just work on one end first before we talk about the back side. If you had 3 poles that had these new lights that go down, straight down, right, and have limited glare, and now could you light half the front side with 3 poles? Could you light all 6 courts?
No,
You couldn't.
you not adequately to provide us a playability, a level of playability. You'd only have light on one side of the object.
No, I understand that. I'm just trying to say, I know that you replicate it on the backside. I'm just asking, can you do it with, look, I'll use this, can you do it with 6 poles? 3 on one side, 3 on the other? And
Sure.
get adequate light for all 6 courts?
Yes, yeah.
And I just want to make sure, you're an expert in lighting, and you're telling me the new lighting says that there's not going to be any glare. You're the expert.
Depending, there's a point where you will reach where you will be out of the beam itself,
and you will not experience any glare.
Because we want to protect the neighbors, and I respect the neighbors. These lights now are brutal, I've been saying that forever. What we are saying is not going to be a lot of glare, it's going to be very, 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 very minimal.
That is LED, yeah. Pole height? That I don't know.
Is there a cost or significant cost difference in terms of number of poles and the height of the lights? In other words, is there a big cost difference if you did 4 poles, one at each corner that were much bigger, much brighter, and lit up the whole thing versus having 3 or 4 on each side?
Really, typically it would tend to wash out. You might have a little higher installation on one approach,
Yeah.
but that would be offset by materials reduction. So it's rule of thumb, it's pretty much a wash.
So, assuming that that's the case, it's pretty much a wash, and, I think the impact on the neighbors is more from the height of a pole and the glare of the light. With the new technology, having lower poles and more of them, if it's not a huge cost difference, why don't we just go with that? We'll have however many you recommend on each side of the courts, line it up with the new technology with the controls so they can be shut off, maybe even shut off some of the courts if they're not needed, and go that direction, I would suggest. Particularly since we're talking about lighting a court that's already lit.
Okay, yeah, Elliot.
Does the height of the poles influence the light, or can you get poles that are a little lower or higher? What's the range that makes them, what level are they the most effective,
Yeah,
depending
so
on height?
For us, it just comes down to geometry. We want to have at least 25 to 28 degree aiming angle. So depending on the number of poles and zones that you know, that direction you point us, if we went with three down each side, or let's say it's 100 feet from one pole, that's the furthest point the fixture needs to aim. In order to get a minimum of 25 degrees, we apply a cotangent of 2.145, and that tells us it's probably about a 50 pole.
I'm sorry, how?
Not
50.
So we need a 50-foot pole.
Well, no. I'm just throwing out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, these are, I think, 25-foot poles.
I mean, you're probably looking at minimum of 40 to be effective.
Anybody, hello.
I would like to go back to, Mike, how long have you been with Musco?
18 years.
Okay, I'm aware that Musco is working with Dark Skies out in Arizona to try to develop standards for playing fields. There are no standards right now. It's kind of wishy-washy, given the impact that it has on neighbors and abutters. They're trying to come out with these standards by the end of this year. Well, they're not done.
Various entities they've had them for.
Right, but Moscow, I talked to them last week, and so they are trying to they are working with you to try to come up with standards for this kind of issue in a municipality, my first thing. Susan Pauline O'Brien brought in a very nice brochure. She's been bringing it in every week, thank God, which is much lower scale lighting, that we could have more of those, and they would not inflict this institutional athletic complex mentality on these tennis courts, and they would be more controllable in that often nobody's on the courts after 9 o'clock, so we get into issues of timing, etc. And then the issue is, if there's only one person on that court, we don't need 2 or 3 lit up. And I think that's very critical, given that these things are 30 feet from our house. Last night, I'm sitting on my sofa, And I'm in the interrogation room as usual with these lights on my body, and everybody is welcome for a drink to come see this, because picture's worth 1,000 words. So the big issues with light from everything I've been researching is glare, which is certainly, I am getting glare. I'm getting glare not only from these tennis courts lights, but also from the N-Star lights that are in the road, that's not under your control right now, but coming into my house.
None of the lights are.
I understand. Okay, so there's glare, there's light trespass where it's spilling over beyond what it's supposed to be lighting. There's sky glow, which is the amount of light that's reflected up and blocks out. We will not be able to see the great event coming up on August 21st here, given what's going on. And then there's the timing. Those are the 4 critical issues, I think, for lights on this field and in this neighborhood, and anywhere in Watertown, given how tight we are with the butters and field space. So I would really like Susan to give you the opportunity to look at what she has, to see if you can speak to whether or not that product could do the job. Because I think most people sitting in this room would like a low-key aesthetic light that could do the job without having this constant thing that the Martians are coming to get me. And I'm going to go if they come. Peter will be very happy. And I'm willing to go because I'm an adventurer. But this is so critical. Lighting is the most contentious issue on Victory Field. I will tell that honestly. And any of those lights up there, everything we've got on the turf field is much bigger, much brighter, much harsher than anything on that poster.
So if I could just, so are you looking at this one?
Yes.
The one that so back in July 10th, we distributed to the committee a data sheet that Susan had sent with these box lights on poles. Is something to request being looked at. I guess the biggest concern is how do we provide a total cutoff of all measurable light at the property line when the edge of the court is actually at the property line?
Yes.
And doing it, I understand the angle, you said 25 to 28 degree aiming angle, but there still is going to be some glare coming from that. And the higher you go, obviously, the higher the pole is, the more the light comes straight down. And so I guess the question is, instead of putting that kind of field lighting, could we go to something more like this tennis court style lighting?
Absolutely, you can feel free to do whatever you do.
And what would those fixtures look like? Because those then, since the fixture is shining straight down, the cutoff at the property line is much easier to control because the light fixture is parallel with the ground versus 28 degrees. So is that an option if we were to go with that? What would the pole arrangement look like? How high would the poles be?
We don't do this type of lighting, so
Okay.
I mean, I really can't comment. I would say, to me, it's kind of a pole farm effect. Lots of poles, you're not gonna get quite the distribution, the playability on the court because you're gonna have so much buildup of light underneath the light poles themselves. They can't aim the light out to the center of the court as well as an aimable fixture. I mean, these are not aimable fixtures. They're just, you put them up and you get what you get.
Does that look like it's 20 poles? Would be like 4 poles per court here?
Yeah.
Well, are 4 fixtures per court?
Poles looks like on this drawing.
Well, 4.
Let me see.
But wouldn't you have, if you had a set of poles between the courts, you'd have one pole with
Fixtures going both ways.
not 2 poles next to each other with one for one court, one for the other. We're going to talk about technical things and then we'll open up to the public. So let's just give us some chance to sort of work our way through some of the technical issues here. So I guess that would be the question. So, so you think maybe 4 of those box fixtures per court?
That's what they're depicting, actually, there's 6 per one. There's a bunch of, like I said,
You don't make, Busco doesn't do that kind of lighting. So, okay, so I guess maybe the question would be, Glenn, would we get should we get another manufacturer in here that can get us some alternatives? So my, I guess my concern is, we have poles with floodlights on them mounted at an angle shining down on the court. And we have a tremendous problem with glare and spillover into the adjoining property, despite best efforts to try to shield them, just because of the very nature of the angle, So, and I like the picture that, you showed there, but, you'll see that those tennis courts are surrounded by like a sidewalk that's all lit up with the light. That's actually somebody's backyard near their bedroom window. So it's really hard with an angle mounted light on a pole to
Well, these,
provide
there's gonna be light that goes behind on this approach also, just, so you know. They can't,
Well, it can't be perfect, but you can, I think, because it's a down, again, I'm just, throwing it out there, just trying to just understand the nature of the light shining down is different than a light shining at a.
I would challenge the photometry. Our photometry would be, we can provide candela values at those houses. And we'll do it and compare it to what that provides. And let the numbers speak for themselves.
Is there someplace in Boston that
Yes.
we could go and look at this light? I know that was from Iowa, this picture. Is there somewhere, do you have this installed in the Boston area?
Here again, I'm from Connecticut. I don't know what Mike's got in the air currently.
I speak with him when he gets back from vacation. Try to identify a court area that people can go look at.
There's some up on the Cape I'm familiar with, but other than that.
Okay, Tony and then Peter.
I'm sorry. I just want to, the ones that Susan brought, this perfection fencing, these lights that we just saw, they're not, how broad does the light go? How far?
I don't even think that's LED. That's probably metal halide fixture.
So it just goes straight down, the light comes straight down, does it go out at all?
It's gotta go out some, because it's gonna go out and it's gonna go back as just a symmetrical reflector inside it's basically that technology on the far left, but hidden inside a shoebox and tilted upside down.
The US Tennis Court and Track Builders is using this and they won an award, so it can't be all that bad.
It's okay, guys. Okay, Peter.
Council, I'm getting a little frustrated. I don't think we should still keep on talking about lights that were put in Victory Field in 1973. Those lights are history.
Okay, Peter,
No,
we're talking
no.
about new lights, we're not talking about.
Well, no, but I think some people on the committee are referring to what's going on now. I completely, and I think you have no argument from anybody that the lights right now need to be replaced. In my field, athletics and recreation, the purpose of lights are to light a field, a light a court safely, efficiently, and effectively. And I think we could talk forever, but obviously Musco, in their type of scheme, has developed lighting that really minimizes the spillage. And I think we have to go, I'm fine with looking into that other group, but we sometimes just carry on and carry on. That's the best we could do. I know that's the best we could do.
Center court at Wimbledon, for example.
Thank you.
They don't have a butters 30 feet
Okay,
from the light, Mike.
So, and again, I think the design criteria for this is not professional tennis, so, let's,
So if you're looking for, reference or, installations, there's a Center Court Wimbledon, USTA, all the courts at Flushing Meadows are all Musco LED.
okay. Before Elodie speaks, does anybody else want to weigh in who hasn't had a chance to speak yet? No? Okay, good.
I need to speak to the light again, Mike, and I realize you're not our representative in Massachusetts, but we have been living with the lights at Victory Field now, Phase 1, for roughly 6 years. Again, this was your installation, your company's installation, state-of-the-art we were promised. They would go down and off when they were not being used. They would be computer operated so that if it's raining, they would be turned off. We got all these great promises. These lights are on constantly, rain or shine, whether somebody's on the field or not. They are extremely bright. They were set up because we think we're living in Texas with Friday night light football games to have this unbelievable glare so they can use it for cable access TV. I think our football team according to the schedule that I've seen right now, they have 1 home game so far that's published, but usually, let's say, maybe they play 5. I don't know what's going on with that, different story. So you have to understand, we're not fond of you right now. We don't believe you, because we've been complaining.
speak for
We have been
yourself.
complaining about this issue for 6 years, and nothing gets resolved, and that was state of the art. So why is it not resolved? That's my question, Benny, in all this. Why is it not computerized? Why are they not going up? Why are they on rain, sleet, or snow? That's a very fair question to be asking.
Yes. Okay. So one of the questions, so there is quite a bit of glare and spillover from the lights that were installed 6 years ago. And, that's, I think, the trepidation of the community and the abutters is that, despite being told it was going to be shielded and more direct downlight, that there still is a significant amount of glare and spillover. And many people in this room will tell you that when those lights are on, it's shining into their house today, despite that. So my concern is that, using these halide lights that you're talking about, is that, is it actually going to, really significantly reduce the amount of glare and spillover compared to what's currently on the football field? And I think it would be, if it is a new technology, a different fixture than what's currently on the football field.
Absolutely.
Is there somewhere that we could actually look at it, in operation here in the Boston area?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that would be really helpful, because it's, again, and then, the other thing is then the height of the poles, and certainly the number of poles versus, fewer poles at a higher height versus shorter poles with more of them is sort of a trade-off.
Real quickly on the difference in technology. Everybody, we're bombarded with LED this and LED that. This is an LED.
I have them at home, yeah, I know.
Well, you have one of those diodes?
Oh, yes, it's in a light that I have. You can arrange the heat, so the warmth of the light, etc.
So instead of, with the previous technology, we had one light source. This is what is at 80 feet in the air, or 90 feet on the one pole. And we had to build a reflector system around this light source and direct all its electrical energy onto the field. With LEDs, there are diodes, and each individual diode, over 200 of them, has their own reflector system. So each of those diodes is directed pinpoint to a point on the field. So it's night and day when it comes to our ability to control light and eliminate glare. It's 200 of those with their own individual visors versus a single reflector system.
Is this what's at Daly Field, Mike? Do you know? Do you know Daly Field? No, you're not familiar here. And may I say one more thing, Vinny?
Sure.
I think the real issue is, and as a municipal issue, which is going on statewide in Massachusetts, there's legislation in front of our state government. Will Bronsberger is one of the sponsors for night sky issues. It's been going on since 2011. Massachusetts is not as forward-thinking as it likes to think it is. Connecticut, Maine, and New Hampshire have all adopted some kind of ordinance for night sky issues, to let things be dark once in a while. We have higher standards for developers that are building buildings in our town than we have for our municipal government in terms of what we have to endure as tax-paying residents. That sticks in my craw personally, that we are given short shrift on these lighting issues when we've owned our houses there for a long time. We pay our taxes and we keep getting more and more light and less pleasure in our property. I think that's a valid issue. Now, the people that are developing Arsenal Yards or Athena, they have very tough standards on how the light can spill over, how high the poles can be, what kind of reflection people can see. Now, they're not playing fields, but I think we need more sensitivity, more consideration for the abutters that are living 30 feet from all these lights. We have not seen it in phase one. You can be sure I'm like a bull on this issue for phase two. It's nothing personal, Mike. You just walked into a hornet's nest, that's all, okay?
Tony?
Yes, could you tell me what light is now used at Victory Field?
None of those.
The new, the present Victory Field?
Yeah, it's the third one from the right.
Well, there's just more fixtures out there.
Right.
That's
It's
why.
Multiple, right, it's not just two.
Yeah,
There's more fixtures out there.
2005.
third from the right.
This one?
Yes, yeah.
And the one that, the next one, can you, the difference between that one and the one to the right, could you just give me the difference between the one with only 7?
Yeah, so the one with 7 is what we would propose to use today.
Okay, and that has 200 of those little,
Each individual fixture has approximately 200 diodes.
and how many fixtures would be on a pole?
That's gonna depend on what full candle level you settle on, how many poles you settle on.
So if we tried to do what Steve McGroom mentioned, at 4 in each corner, and we could limit the number of poles, which is what I'm trying to get to, is less poles. You could do a number of fixtures, each 200, each with 200 LEDs in it.
Correct, yep.
You have some sense of how many fixtures you might need?
You probably, if you went to 4 poles,
Yeah,
you're probably
each
looking
corner.
at probably 6 fixtures on each pole.
6 fixtures.
Yep.
Now, the trade-off with that is the issue of control. We could talk about control, is it right to talk?
Yeah, let's talk about control.
Control. So, are you able to, I'm just gonna ask some stupid questions.
Fire away.
Okay. So if you have 4 fixtures, or did you say 6, I'm sorry, 6?
4 poles,
Here, you
6
just-
fixtures.
4 poles, 6
Yeah.
fixtures. On one pole, if you have 6 fixtures, is there a way to turn off a number of fixtures, or is it just the whole thing goes off
No, you can have individual control.
on each of the fixtures?
Sure.
So you could have controls on each of the 6 fixtures?
You could, I wouldn't advise it because what you really want to have is control over a zone.
Uh-huh,
So,
okay.
because here again, you need to ensure playability. You need to have light on all sides of the object.
Right.
The light needs to be distributed uniformly across the surface, so an object doesn't go from dark to light because it tends to speed up in that scenario. So there's modeling aspects.
But the bottom line is that there is control over each of these fixtures also, but on all 4 of the poles.
You can control them individually. That means running individual circuits out to each pole.
Yeah,
which
which we may or
becomes-
may not need to, but the option is there is what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And all you would need to light those 6 courts would be 4 poles with 6 fixtures that are the kind with the LED, 200 in each one, and that you can direct those in pretty much where you want to direct it.
Now, keep in mind, if you went with a 4-pole approach, those
Yep.
poles get taller
Right?
because they
No,
have to
that's what
throw
Vinnie
the
said
light
earlier,
further.
the fewer poles, the shorter, but the
Right.
taller poles.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Elliot and then Peter.
I assume you'd be able to have rain sensors?
Well, with our, so there's a control system, which I believe, sounds like you have. So you can schedule the lights to turn on and turn off. So a typical scenario would be, there's a default, the lights come on at sunset, and they turn off at 10 p.m. Now, unless somebody calls and tells us it's raining, don't turn the lights on, well, let me back up. In a municipal scenario such as this, you would have the ability to turn, the lights could be turned on from sunset to 10 p.m. If nobody shows up, the lights don't go on. There would be a push button on each of the zones somebody shows up, push the button, lights come on for an hour, and if they walk away after 10 minutes, after that hour's timed out, the light's extinguished.
Okay, Peter.
And that's what we went over in 2014, and so that's what works. So a couple of things go on here. What would be your recommendation, the number of poles? Because I understand, Council, you want to be sensitive with the 4 poles, but in the situation that we're trying to do, my thought would have 3 poles on either side lighting 2 courts. So if somebody went over and pressed the button, it would be just 2 courts and so on and so forth. Because I think you might have a problem with the poles might be too high and then you'd have less control of the zones. One of the mistakes we made at the Victory Phase 1, we didn't put enough zones in there, so we didn't put the safety zones in and so on and so forth. So that's the answer. I mean, the lights, the power will go on, the lights won't go on until somebody goes over and then push buttons. And we talked about that in 2014. That's the answer. It's a pretty simple answer.
So if I could just maybe ask the question, so 5 tennis courts, would we do that as 2 zones?
When I first looked at this,
And then basketball is a separate zone?
well,
Because often there's people playing basketball and nobody's playing tennis.
Correct.
That's sort of the default condition.
I think as a, you can look at it, well, a multitude of ways, but when I first looked at it, and here again, I just got dragged into this morning, so, nice. So I think basically you have 6 areas. If the basically the basketball court's same footprint as tennis. I would approach it as 3 zones. So you'd have 2 courts, and then the other one was a court and the basketball court. So, because then even if, otherwise you've spending more money to like just a basketball court. And I think the uniformity, the, aesthetically it would look pleasing that way with even.
And then, just if I could just have one follow-up before I ask, so how many poles would that require to do those sort of 3 zones?
6.
8.
Eight.
And what height? With 8, you'd be probably 40. No reason to go higher.
And then each pole would have approximately how many fixtures? Okay.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
probably 3,
3 fixtures instead of 6.
still at 24 total.
Okay. So that basically 8 poles, about 40 feet high with 3 fixtures per pole, which would give us 3 zones of control with push buttons on and then.
Right.
Well, I just don't know, we're
Yeah,
having a
Tony.
little trouble with, I thought it would be 6 instead of 8, so you have 1 pole doing 2 courts on one side and 1 pole for 2 courts.
So you'd have 4 sources, again, you'd have 4 sources with each zone. So some poles would have lights go in this direction to this zone and lights to this zone.
Oh, okay.
So because, I figured just maybe show the map, so one pole, 2 poles,
Yeah.
3 poles, 4 poles.
Yeah.
And then same thing, so each set of 2 courts would have,
4 sources.
you know,
Yeah.
poles on either side. So that's basically, and that push button can be for each zone.
Correct. Yep.
So there'd be
There'd be three buttons.
3 buttons or
You
whatever.
could mount them next to each other or in each zone, so.
How tall are the existing poles?
That's what I was going to say.
I went out there when I did this, they appeared to be about 25. So that's, I mean, I didn't have my tape measure with me, but compared to a 40-foot high telephone pole, it was less than that. So could have been 28 feet, but I would say taller than 20, less than 30. Okay, and loaded.
No, that, Steve, he's reading my mind
Okay,
again.
Tony.
The idea of control again, so that they could be set to go off at any time, I mean, the morning and go on in the morning and off in the evening. Or else you could have this push button, the buttons, is that right?
The button, so there's always manual control of the key for administrators on site. You can turn the lights on and off yourselves if you wanted to. Yourselves being somebody with a key and access. But in a municipal setting like this, what's typical, a typical installation is you set on our website, you have a page,
Yeah.
and you set the time for the lights to turn on, or where they can be turned on.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Sunset, and it adjusts every day, it tells you longitude and latitude, and it adjusts for sunset at a different time. So sunset till, then there's a hard off at, let's say, 10 PM.
Okay. So that you could, you get the power, the question is whether you want to use the power to.
Right. Yeah, if nobody
So-
shows up and pushes the button that's
That's fine.
for it, no lights.
And you say that the duration of a time that you push the button is an hour?
It's, you can set it to whatever you want.
Oh, you
The
can?
default from the factory, we tend to set it at an hour, but as you're going through the commissioning, if you want to set that to 30 minutes or 2 hours, it's completely up to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Lloyd?
I just have to ask, is this the same system that supposedly is at our football field right now?
Sure, yeah.
And so how come we can't figure it out? I know this sounds like a crazy question, but 6 years, why can't we figure this
I
out?
mean, there's an app, there's a 800 number, 24/7, 365.
Okay, let's, you know, let's.
Well, it's faith, it's
Okay.
good faith.
It is, so this, I just want to ask a question. So this is a web program, so the lighting control is connected to the internet, which is then connected to your webpage, which the rec department could log into and then change the programming?
Yeah,
Okay.
so in our contactor cabinet, we have we establish a connection, a wireless connection to our factory. And then we not only are able to control the lights, but we monitor them, so we track how many hours that they're being used. We track if there's an outage, we can sense that, we send you an email saying, hey, there's an outage on pole F1. This is what the steps we're taking to remedy it. So
Okay.
very proactive communication.
So it's a wire, over like cellular
Yeah,
wireless?
CDMA.
Okay.
Yep.
Not a hardwired?
Correct.
Okay, Peter?
Just for some clarification, so the lights at Casey Field now, we have some lights, I just set them for 2 or 3 months. And so there's 3 zones. There's a zone in center field for that field. There's a zone for the 2 tennis courts and the hockey, and there's a zone for the basketball. Generally, doesn't fluctuate, so it goes sunset to 10 o'clock. When it rains, I do call and cancel. I could do that on my phone, I could do it on the web. Victory, I know I'm careful, but because it's an artificial turf field, we could play in the rain. But I did shut it down last Wednesday when there was thunder and lightning. We do keep it on because people will play in a rain safely. So that's why sometimes you ride by and it's raining and it's on. That's the purpose of the artificial turf field. So, and we try to keep them on as much as possible. But I'm very sensitive to the fact if all of a sudden, like Wednesday, there's a thunder and lightning storm, we shut down the field and we don't put the lights on.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Mark?
Yeah, I guess just going back to kind of the fields and the usage, right? I think one of the things is that I still don't quite understand why everything's on until 10 o'clock.
Okay,
So-
No,
But this is
Okay.
because for fairly obvious reasons, if we're setting it from sunset to 10, we're doing it for a reason, right? And so there's no light pollution or overflow if the lights aren't on. And so the question is, looking at the process of justifying the 10 o'clock, right? So when we look at 10 o'clock, because again, if we're looking at kind of what you're trying to do is lessen the exposure, right? I think that's one of the things that you're trying to do to kind of, so you strike the balance between the field being a field, the field having lights, but then also the fact of usage and how the fields are used so that the lights are benefiting the people who should be using the fields, right? I think that's one of the things, and I think it's core to what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure that people have the benefit of the field, but all too often we've driven by, particularly with the tennis courts, and they're on, and I don't want them, I can't see them from my house, thankfully, as they say, but I'm almost certain that's a problem, and I think that's what we have to figure out as part of this too, because it's a recommendation of the phase 2 victory field, the usage of the field, right? Number 1. Number 2, it does strike me that Victory Field and the light from Victory Field is concerning the folks that it's bleeding over into this discussion. And I don't know if one of our recommendations as a group could be to bring in Musco and say, you know, here's the baseline, here's where we thought it was gonna be, and here's where the performance of those lights are as part of the committee's work, right, with regard to, you can see the lights from what we're talking about, so I think the impact of that too, I would say that wouldn't be a bad idea of having the experts come back in and say, okay, this is how it was designed, here's what it looked like, how could we optimize that, because it is impacting, quote unquote, the phase 2 component of this.
If I could maybe put that on the list, we can discuss
Sure.
phase 1 lighting later, because I do want to be able to get through our agenda today, and let's come back to that as a committee about the phase 1 lighting, and let's see if we can just focus on phase 2 decisions first. So Steve had his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For me, I think we need to focus back, okay, let's try to, you know, eliminate some of the decisions. So, we're talking about tennis courts, their existing lighting, which clearly nobody likes. It's an issue, we need to upgrade it, let's upgrade it. Let's make it, to me, the only decision is how many poles and how tall are they gonna be. We know we're gonna use, you know, latest technology, which will give us better control when they're on and off. It won't be as glare producing, and it'll be hopefully a better situation for the neighbors. So at least the way I see it, there's one question: how many poles and how tall should they be?
Okay.
Well, so we want to move on to, want us to respond to that?
Well, I mean, let's, if anybody on the committee talk about that, and then I want to open up to some comments from the public.
Okay, I think Steve's right. I just thought maybe the other decision might be the issue of not so much control, but because we know we can control the lights, and we also can set the time. I'm wondering if there's, just to ask a question of Mike, are there any competitive tennis matches that go beyond 9 o'clock?
Having trouble with my mic here.
The red,
No.
the red button on.
Yeah, the red button's on now. We do not, I'm being very quiet here because for the high school purposes, we do not use the tennis courts or the basketball courts in terms of our athletic program.
Yes.
Recreationally, they use it, so that's why I'm staying pretty quiet at this
Yes.
thing. I understand Ann's point about using the basketball courts. Many of our athletes will go down and use those courts.
Yeah.
Many of our tennis players will go down maybe off hours and use them as well. But in terms of the athletic program, we just use them during the day.
Right. Is there any way, Peter, is there any way of gauging how much use both the tennis and the basketball courts get from 9 to 10 at night?
I think,
Anecdotally even.
yeah, I think subjectively, the basketball courts seem to be more active late at night. But again, I think this is a bigger issue, that the facility is open till 10 o'clock.
Oh, the whole
You know,
facility.
the whole facility is open, you know, so that's another question. I'm not opposed to doing, to answer your question, I think the basketball tends to be a little busier toward, as the night goes on. I mean, to my friend to my right, and not being the athletic director, but maybe they could start scheduling some night games. Coach Adorni might, some night matches. I'm just having some fun. No, but I'm just saying,
Okay, so I want to just end my,
Thank you very much.
agreeing with Steve that I think Steve is on the right direction in terms of what we're.
And I just wanted to follow up on Tony's thing, by having, and one of the big problems today is, if you go there at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, the lights are on, and many people will be using the basketball court, but nobody will be.
Nobody's on the
On the
tennis.
tennis court.
They're on the basketball.
So I think having this push button control, where if nobody's there, the lights aren't on, is a really a good strategy. Will really greatly benefit the neighborhood. So, if nobody in the committee has any questions, there's a lot of people in the audience who want to have questions.
Can I just make
Oh,
one
sorry,
more comment?
Mike.
I'm sorry. I will say that adult tennis does line up after our tennis matches. I don't know how late they go, but I'm just being kind of an advocate for recreational tennis as well, just since Peter's sitting next to me tonight, I'll have to say that. No, but they do line up. Adults come in, as soon as we're off the court, they come in. I don't know how late they stay, but they're there.
Okay, so anyway, so Libby had her hand up first, and then Russ, and then Jim, and then Susan. So just state your name, your address, and try to keep it brief and on topic.
Sure. Libby Shaw, Templeton Parkway. So I'm really interested in this matter of control because it sounds like it's really important not only for the neighborhood but just environmentally. Less light when it's not needed is better, and it sounds as though the button arrangement means that it's possible that the lights could not be on unless people are actually using the facility. So my question is, at MIT, our lights are now set up so that if a room is empty, after a certain period of time, the lights go off. There's a motion sensor. Is motion sensing for turning the lights off an option in this system?
So I'll ask Mike from Moscow.
I haven't been asked that question yet, but I can certainly, I mean, we do all types of controls, and certainly we can explore it for you.
I think, if I could, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think that's probably not a good idea because a dog runs across the court and lights come on.
No,
Yeah.
for turning the lights off.
Oh, it's on
Well,
time.
but if we have them set on a timer, so you push the button and you get, you know, a half-hour play or an hour play, and then they go off. I think that's probably better unless on, off, which, at least if I was a neighbor, I think I'd find as
There are
obnoxious
there are
as-
British sitcoms about power that runs on a timer. It's I think it could be irritating for people to have to keep running back and hitting the on button again.
That's okay.
Well, let me, I tell you what, let's just put that as a question.
In any case, with the new technology, we can control that.
I will put that as a question to investigate. And we'll bring that back to the committee. Russ had his hand up next.
Russell Rico from Fayette Street here in Watertown. You know, if I've learned anything in the last 70 years I've been on this earth, is that never trust new and improved until you verify it, okay? So this is what I feel that should happen here. The company that wants to sell us these lights, they should be able to produce a list of somewhere in New England, several places where these lights have been put. The number of lights, the height of the poles, all the detailed information. And then, anyone on this committee, any citizen in Watertown, and especially the abutters, should have the opportunity to see these lights in action. And I'll tell you what, if I owned that company for pure marketing purposes, I would pay for several of the abutters to stay in a hotel overnight. And the agreement would be this: if you're happy with this lighting, and it definitely reduces the glare, all I want you to do is sign a testimonial that I can use it to sell this to other people, okay? So that's what should be done before we spend any more money whatsoever, okay? Now, the thing that I heard tonight here that, you know, sort of ticks me off a little bit, which I did not know, that as a taxpayer here in Watertown, we spent money 6 years ago for new lighting, and we didn't accomplish the goals that were told at that time. I mean, don't you think we definitely don't want to make the same mistake over again, okay? Now, that's the issue of improving the lighting, okay? Now there's the other issue which hasn't been brought up yet, and that's new lighting, okay? Now, increased lighting will affect the quality of life for the abutters. That's a fact, there's no question about it, okay? Now, the question that must be asked by all of us is, how would we feel if we were an abutter, okay? We wouldn't be happy with increased lighting. So, I'll tell you, there's some serious things here, decisions that have to be made. And I said at the first meeting, my #1 concern is the quality of life for the abutters.
Thank you, Russ.
You're welcome.
Jim?
So if I understand correctly, Mike.
Just for the
Oh, I'm
camera,
sorry. I'm sorry, Jim Gutman, 7 Sydney Street. If I understand correctly, we're talking about 3 zones for 6 courts. And 3 zones for 6 courts will give us heights of a certain, pole heights of a certain measurement, with a number of fixtures on them to cover. I'd like to know, if I were on the committee, I would want to know what would the cost difference be between that proposal and having poles between each court with only 2 fixtures on each pole, so that each court is lit individually? That's my first question. My second question is, with the array of 200 individual light sources, are those light sources individually focusable, or do they come preset? So those are the two things I want to know.
Okay, and just, I'll ask Mike about the 200 LEDs in each lamp, are they individual? Describe how that works.
So we can create different NEMA types. Just speak back there. We can create different NEMA types with different beam spreads that are preset at the factory. So if we're shooting light a long distance, we need a narrow beam. If we're shooting light like on a tennis court, we have a different type of beam. That's all, the beam type is set in the factory, and then the aiming, the physical angles are also set in the factory, but are also adjustable in the field.
So, and
What
when you,
about color?
Penny, can I
Color?
interject?
5700.
when you say individually adjustable, it's the whole array that's
That's
adjustable,
correct, yeah.
not the individual diodes?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah. And then, just a quick note, if you go to, Musco has a YouTube channel with plethora of testimonials from neighbors. There's one from Colorado State University that's, I think, particularly applicable here.
Elliot had a follow-up.
I just wanted to add more of a question. Safety is one of the things. I used to play a lot of tennis, and sometimes you go run after a ball and you're not paying too much attention. Where are these poles located in either of these, the two varieties? If it's between the court, I don't know if that would set up a problem.
That's a great point. We always, we take the approach that we want to be outside the fences. The inside the fence, I'm with you, I've got a shoulder that took on a light pole on a tennis court and the pole won.
So I guess the other part of my question is, if you have poles between each court, what happens to the height of those poles?
I mean, we wouldn't take that approach. We would back away gracefully.
I don't understand.
So this company doesn't make those styles of lighting, they only make the big pole lighting, so that he can't actually answer that question. If we wanted to look at a different style of lighting, such as what Maria Flino, Susan Flino produced, would be, we'd have to look.
Bill, I think the question was if rather than having the 4 poles, you had 8 poles.
Right. Then does the height of the fixtures come down?
Right.
Yeah, so what we're looking at with the 8 poles, we're still looking at 40-foot poles
So no.
to get the correct aiming angles.
So it's 40-foot poles either way?
40, well, you had mentioned the poles in between the
Right,
courts.
right. I don't mean in between, like literally in between, you know, outside the playing area.
If we had more poles, how far could the poles come in?
Thank you.
Okay, so if you had 12, I think you're still looking at, maybe, I mean, we could explore 30, but I would still stick with the 40 as a
12 pole.
So what you're saying is that there's no difference in the height of the poles
Right.
if we do 8 poles or 6 poles or 4 poles?
If you do
Their
6
problem.
zones versus 3 zones.
If you do 3 zones instead of 6 zones, the pole height stays the same.
the fewer poles, the taller they get.
But you just said that you would still do 40 feet if we did
If you
6.
did, well, there's a point of diminishing return where you still have to aim from the pole location at least to just past the center of the court. So you're still, 40 feet is the lowest we would go on any tennis court.
But you're also saying that 40 feet would, if we did 3 zones, you could do it at 40 feet.
3 zones, you could, yeah.
So there's no difference in the height of the fixtures or the poles if you do 3 zones or 6 zones.
Yeah.
And just, if I could just clarify, because the limiting factor is the beam distance this way.
Correct,
So, you know, you can't, you know, if it's 40 feet, or, you know, if it's 80 feet, you know, at some point, the beam angle slats go all the way through the court, and because this distance isn't changing, the height.
So lower that pole, you're gonna expose that beam to the people.
It would be, the beam goes more horizontal, and now it's shining across the property line. So that's the geometry of it. So that's, since we're not making the court smaller, if we made the court smaller, we could use a lower pole, but because.
Like pickleball would be fun.
Yes, you got the idea. Now
Okay,
you're talking.
just real quick, because we're getting, Susan.
It's Susan Flynn O'Brien to 30 Orchard Street, and my question was, the pole height I understand is 40 feet high, but how, like for the people that are the direct abutters behind the tennis courts, how bright, you're saying there's no, it says 7 candela or something, I think you said it was 7 candelas? And I wish my uncle were alive today because he was a super electrician in the town of Watertown. He could explain all of this. Michael Abato, and he lived on Orchard Street. He was wonderful, and everybody respected his opinion. So, but he's not here, and I'm not an electrician. My question is, how much of that beam of lighting is going to get into the houses from behind with 7 candelas? Number one, because it's still a bulb lit. And what about solar lighting that doesn't use electricity? That's also a newer type of lighting that we have never discussed here. It would be lit from the actual earth instead of us paying for that lighting source. Has anybody thought about that?
We do not have a solar option.
Okay.
I can tell you we've experimented with solar and wind turbines and all kinds of things, but just, we're a lighting company, we'll leave that to the solar people.
So the first question about still the spillage, for the lights here shining this way, what's the in terms of the spillage over onto the
So that,
adjoining property?
to give you an idea, 7 candela, a 100-watt desk lamp produces about 400 candela. So it's nearly nothing. You're not gonna experience anything. And what we would do is give you either candela readings on the property line or on the house. You can do it on the window, on any plane, any place. You tell us what numbers you want to see, we can generate them.
I'm sorry, one more thing I was going to ask was, I don't know who decided in the whole town that it was going to be 10 o'clock at night for Victory Field to stay open, because Belmont comes over to use our park for tennis at night, because their residents oppose any lighting at night at all for their tennis in the town of Belmont. So I met 2 engineers that were in 2 years ago. I said, oh gee, we kind of got my mom's car stuck there at the end of the park. So I went over, there were only 2 players on the whole night. It was on fall night in October, right? It was a lovely night, beautiful warm night. 2 players, I got talking to them because they were engineers and I had some computer problems. So that's really what happened. So they gave me the number. And they lived in Belmont, and they said there's no way they play in Belmont because the tennis courts are closed, because the residents oppose any kind of lighting at night, the direct abutters. And we are all direct abutters probably in this whole room. And we get the glare from my house on Orchard Street, from the big football field from phase 1, right into my mother's dining room on the 2nd floor and the 1st floor. I can see them every night lit up in the rain, snow, shine, whatever. And we see that. We don't have to light our own house up. We have their lights to light our house up. And same with the tennis courts. And it's really, maybe the candela light would work properly. Maybe it'd be lovely. I don't know. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it in person.
Okay, Steve Kennedy.
So, 2 quick comments. One, the current football field lights were described as being the second from the right, from the left, from the right going left. My impression from standing on Marion Road would be go all the way to the left.
Right, and add 2 rows.
I have, there's nothing like that my house is a good way from the end of the football field. So that's just one thing. I'm not saying it's not a good representation, but it's not a representation. Somebody has to tell me how far away you are.
The second comment I'll make is, and I think this is probably intrinsic in the physics. We're talking about getting less glare at the price of approximately doubling the height of those poles. And obviously, if we want even less glare, we'll go higher so we can make a steeper angle. But I think that's worth thinking about. I don't know where people are going to come out on that.
Okay. Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, Dan Cedrone, high school tennis coach. The only addition I wanted to make is that there are currently 8 poles, 4 on each side. But I think the far end, right with the basketball court, there are 2 poles at each end of the basketball court. So court 1 doesn't get any really direct light because the lights are shining on the basketball court. It would be nice if the first set of lights was between the basketball court and court 1 with some light being cast on the basketball court. You don't need that much light on a basketball court. But on a tennis court, the ball's moving pretty quick at night. You need more lighting. I mean, the lighting is inconsistent now on the courts. Some courts are a little brighter than others. It'd be nice to have consistent lighting on each court. And I think you might achieve that by putting that pole, that first pole, between the basketball and the tennis court.
Yeah, I think that's what the spacing out there doesn't make sense today, so if we put new poles, they'll be evenly spaced. Caroline?
So I have 2 questions. Number one, speaking to what she was saying, is there a way to put a sample light up 40 feet and just see at night what it does? Is there a chance we could do that? And the other thing is, do we need all of the tennis courts lit up? Is there enough usage of the tennis courts, or could we do it so that 2 were, we lit up 2, lit up 3, we have to have all 5 of them lit up?
Yeah, I think just to the second point, I think we're talking about the control system, that only the ones being used be lit up because they can push buttons.
No, I mean in terms of installing the light.
Oh, installing.
Yeah.
I can answer that, Council.
Okay, Peter.
Dan Cedrone runs a great adult program that's offered on Wednesday, and he has 5 courts being used with the basketball court. I think the key thing is a push button, because I hear you. You don't want the lights on when they don't need to, but he does a great job, and his 5 courts are lit.
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, good question. Thank you.
And again, to the point, Russ Rico so eloquently made, we do want to see some of these installed in the field somewhere so we can actually go and take a look at them and see for ourselves.
And I apologize if you're in my territory.
Okay.
Exactly where it's
I will follow up with when the regular guy gets
I can get
back from vacation.
Project planning person can put it. List
Mark.
the other
I guess just as you think about it, right, I think, so the high school, a lot of contention is around kind of the high school and the high school using the courts, right? So we don't like the courts for the high school program, correct? I guess we have a tennis program, an adult tennis program that we use the lights for. What are there other lighted tennis courts in town that would accommodate that? Because if we're lighting it, right, we don't light the park, do we? I don't think we do. There's lights there, but we don't physically light the park.
That's next.
But you think about it, right, kind of, we look at the usage, I think we look at the usage of the field, right, and I think, it makes sense if it's a high school, right, we were pretty emotive topics around storage and around pole vaulting and around track and whatnot. I think the idea here is that we're trying to figure out what the best use of the space is. I know it's lit today, I can understand why it's lit today, but the reality of it is if there's other locations that are lit, and it's not the high school, it's not the high school field, are there alternatives where we're lighting them and we're lighting them for the sake of lighting them, right? Right now, if you had said to me the high school plays until 10 o'clock, and there were no other tennis courts in Watertown, I'd be like, okay. I'm advocating, absolutely, I think the 5 courts, I think was the give in some respects, because now we have 5 courts, we can play 3 singles, 2 doubles, and I think that was, so the idea of reducing that number was one piece. But I think then the other piece now is if we're lighting them for the sake of them being lit, I can see why, most people play tennis in the summer, last time I checked. obviously it's the latest, the longest summer, but they certainly do in the fall, right? And so when I kind of look at, I don't know if the Arsenal is lit, or the courts back there are lit, but when you kind of look at kind of the alternatives, why are we lighting them, right? Is it so that we can keep them open until 10 o'clock so nobody's there, right? You know, one of the big issues here is usage, right? Is it usage or is it availability? If it's availability, they're going to be available all the time, right? Because you're going to have them lit until 10 o'clock, and if you just choose to go and play tennis, you can go play tennis in Watertown until 10 o'clock. I'm not advocating we do what other towns do, but I think we've all driven by, and I understand the kind of the on-off push button and whatnot, but the reality of it is we're now talking about replacing lights because there are lights there already. But do we really need to replace the lights that are there already if we don't know what the usage is, if we don't know, you know, who's going to use the courts, and kind of how we play it forward, right? And no disrespect to the adult tennis, I think it's a great program, but you know, the reality of it is now we're talking about putting in, and not an insignificant cost, lights for something that we don't know who uses it, right? Other than having it available, which makes sense, but it's a summer sport, right? I think, you know, for the most part. I'll certainly defer to the tennis coach.
Dan?
Yeah, just to comment on that, I do have 30 adults who participate in the adult program on Wednesday nights, and we go from 6 p.m. till 9 o'clock.
Right. I think one of the, but that's a good point, but one of the big pushes for everybody that's certainly on the youth sports, and I see Ray Davidian here, is everybody's had to adjust, right? Because, you know, things change. There's less capacity in town for a lot of services, a lot of playing time and playing fields. So I can appreciate that there's 30 people that play, but also on the flip side, it's 30 people for one night versus having it for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing about this discussion, and I totally get what you're saying, is that this is one issue that has nothing to do with the high school sports or youth sports. This
Right.
is what the purpose of Victory Field for the residents is. And I think, you know, I live right by the end of the last court. I see the lights. I don't play tennis. My kids did rec and all of that. But I do see people out there, and I think that the argument that can be made for keeping the courts lit, although I think on a timer, on a push button, solves a lot of the issue when people are not there, is that you've got people who work, who play tennis, who come after work, and I'm not saying that, you know, the days, it has not been for a while that I've seen a line of people waiting to get on the court. However, there are people who use the courts, and they do use them at night. You might get, you know, random people, random times, fall, spring, summer, whatever. They are not the most used,
Right.
you know, area of the field. I'd like to see some lights more around the track, because I don't feel comfortable at a certain point walking the track at night. But, and the courts are well lit. But I think the irony here is that, you know, this is not for the schools. It is not, nobody, the kids aren't using it at night. This is really for the people in this room who play tennis, who, you know, want to go over there after they get home from work or after dinner or whatever, and, you know, and play. And like I said, that's not me, and I do get some of the effects from the light, but I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody who does want to play tennis in town, so.
Nobody's on those courts after 9 o'clock. I keep chits on my calendar, and I look every single night to see who's out there. The tennis court, I think Pete said that, the tennis court is definitely used until the last moment. And
The basketball.
the basketball, and if they're still running a hot game, they'll pull their cars up and turn on their headlights. So, you know, honestly.
And agree, but even
But,
9
so maybe
o'clock,
the
it's
tennis
dark
courts could go
by 9
off
o'clock.
at 9 o'clock instead of 10 as a hard ball.
But it'll be a moot point if nobody's on there, because the lights won't be on.
Well, as somebody else pointed out, when they're going on and off and on and off, that can be aggravating too. I don't know, I think we really need to see these lights first of all, because it's kind of at the end of the line.
Sure.
Cecilia, Franklin Street.
Okay.
So I have a question about the companies. The only company that we can deal with, because usually, I mean, we get different quotes and we get different things, so I'm hearing only this one option. Nothing else has been explored. I haven't been to the other meetings, so I may have missed that piece. And the other thing is, if we had problems with this company before, now with this pushing buttons, we're gonna have problems again. I'm thinking, you know, who are we gonna contact, how are we gonna take that off, you know? If we have issues with it, once it's installed, who's gonna come and fix it? So those are the two things.
Okay, Catherine.
Catherine, 50 Marion Road, abutter. Yeah, two questions to your point. I really think it would be great if we could have a few lights installed and see how they work before committing to the entire project, because it's going to be very different when you see them in there. And you can go to other spots and look, but it's not going to be the same necessarily configuration as what we have. And number two, I really would like to put out a proposal that we end the lights on the tennis courts at 9 p.m. Why not?
Okay, and then Susan, and then we need to make a decision and move forward, 'cause it's already 8:30. Just in case.
One more suggestion that I'd just love to see, and I'm sure a lot of maybe even adults would like this in Watertown, because in Belmont, I used to skate in Watertown in the wintertime. They used to flood over the tennis courts, and we used to skate. Every Friday night, the lights were on there. It was wonderful for adults and for kids. And I think I went over to Belmont skating rink over by the high school, because we stopped doing that in Watertown. It's a suggestion. I would love to have it back again, because I would be one of the first people to skate again. And I'll be 61 come August, but I miss it. I love it.
Well, I don't believe that.
Believe it. I feel 100 right now. These meetings.
Sorry, somebody has
This August, actually.
I'm just curious, in this kind of new conversation about no tennis courts or removing the lights from the tennis courts, are we including the basketball court? Because I know that the basketball court gets so much play.
No.
So if there's shared light though, if we're talking about limiting the lights on the tennis courts and there's shared light,
You would just light
how
the
will that
courts.
affect the basketball courts?
You would just light the courts.
The basketball court. So we
Correct.
would have to make sure that the lighting for the basketball court is standalone and separate then
Correct.
from the lighting from the, so that should be probably part of the proposal, the cost difference.
Yeah, I'd like to, if we could have the committee focus a little bit, I'd like to make a motion then that we could then bounce
Can't hear
around.
you.
But that motion be that we. So that we could focus a little bit more on the pros and cons to the motion. But I would like to make the motion that we install 8 poles with 3 fixtures on each pole, using the 200 LEDs in each fixture, and that we put those 8 poles, 4 on one side, 4 on the other side, and that those poles be no more than 40 feet.
Okay. Second that. Second. Discussion.
I believe we have to see these lights.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's critical, and I think that's jumping way ahead.
Council, I think there's a motion on the table, and I think we should call the vote, please.
Yes, for discussion.
This discussion.
Someone said
So I think, which is discussion is sort of free-flowing here, as opposed to strictly legislative. I think the caveat of that would, we would like to see a list of installations that we could go look at night to see actually how these lights look. And I would say, do we have consensus that this is a preliminary, do we have preliminary consensus on this, subject to actually getting a list of other installations and making a field trip and looking, seeing how the lights work? And then we can come back and revisit that decision. And then if we're not happy with it, then perhaps we could look at different manufacturers or alternative fixtures.
Okay, may I ask a question? I'd like to know why we can't take up the suggestion of the lady in the second row and the idea that we could look at another manufacturer. So we might have one style of light for the basketball courts, which need to be lit differently, certainly, because we all have everybody out there, and maybe a different style for the tennis courts. Why do we have to say we have to do all one thing? I like the lower lights that Susan brought in. I have called them, I have their catalog. I'm sure we can get somebody in from Precision to look at this and explain it to us, but why does it have to be a one or nothing? I just don't get that. This is going to be here for a long, long time, and we have been living with this headache for a long, long time. So why can't we just go a little further in exploring to see if there's a better alternative option or a mixed option?
So what do people on the committee think about that? Tony?
I think that I like your approach to it, that we stick with the motion as it is, but we amend it to say that people need to, or the committee and others need to go see the proposed lighting the proposed lighting in action. If after that, people don't feel comfortable with it, then we move to bringing in someone else to talk about other options.
No.
What do people think about that, Mark?
I'm
People, okay, please, okay. I'm just gonna ask, no talking over people and just speaking.
Yeah, but you're sort of rolling this through,
No,
getting consensus from the audience.
the consensus is from this committee, not from the audience, so
Yeah,
just.
but we live here.
No, I know that, but you have to trust us to work through the issue.
No, I don't trust you.
So,
Sorry.
So, I guess, we spent an inordinate amount of time on kind of different things here. I think this is a pretty emotive topic for a lot of people. I think lights and parking certainly falls into that category. So, I have a real trouble with the motion where we're taking 8 poles and we're doubling them in size. And then we're gonna go see and take a look and see what's going on somewhere else. And then if it looks okay, we're gonna go, yeah. So, we can't, in my opinion, I'll vote no, just right out there. I don't think it's fair to this group or to in my opinion, I think we need to, I love the idea of, and Michael, I think you're a brave man, well done. I love the idea of potentially putting one light up. Is that plausible?
We can, I'm speaking for my colleague.
Right.
Who's gonna kill you?
This is a sales pitch too, by the way, so this is a group.
I have at my house, and I can easily get it, not easily, but I can get it to him, is one of these fixtures that easily attaches to a lift. And just run it up 40 feet, focus it where it needs to be focused, and you can see.
Right, and so, simple Irish immigrant, I heard easy twice. That means it must be easy. And I think, so that in my mind's eye is something that would be an alternative. We've got 5 more meetings coming, like let's not kid ourselves that we're gonna be done in 2 or 3 meetings. But at least we would have the option of saying, that's what 40 feet looks like, that's what the light looks like. And then, we don't have to go anywhere, we don't have to do anything. Everybody gets a view of it, and in fairness to you and the committee, I think the committee ends up making the decision. I know people are pretty animated about it, but from my perspective, I think that's kind of the view. What does it look like from Orchard Street? What does it look like from wherever? And maybe we leave it up for a day or two. I don't know how it looks or works or whatever, but we turn it on at sunset, we leave it through 10 o'clock. Wow, this could be an experiment, God forbid.
So, okay, so, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is that something that can be arranged?
Yes.
Okay. So, to the committee, so instead of, do we want to postpone the decision until after we see that? Is everybody okay with that? Do we have agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so the agreement is, we'll put up the test fixture. The committee will review,
May I ask a question of Mike, Vinnie?
and then we'll come back to another meeting and we'll
Right.
take up the matter again. And if we're satisfied with the performance of the light, and we'll let the public know when we're doing it. So we will let you know.
That goes without saying.
That will go without saying. So we'll let you know, so you can actually go out there and see it yourself.
Thank you.
And then we'll come back and then we'll take up the matter. And if we're satisfied with the performance of the light, we can then take up the, sort of what Tony, his motion was. And if we're not satisfied with it, then we can look at, where does Susan is she left? Okay, she left. Okay, she wanted to, we could look at other manufacturers that perhaps will give us a better performance. So is the committee in agreement with that?
Yes.
I'm fine with that. One quick question for Mike. Mike, when you put that light up, will it be the actual full, I'm not gonna say this correctly, the full light that would be between the courts, the actual configuration, or a much lesser configuration in terms of looms or whatever you wanna
Yeah.
call it?
It'll be less because it'll be just one individual fixture.
Not three, so, because he was proposing 3 fixtures on the pole.
Let me back,
I'm just trying to figure that out.
you guys really grab down to that 3 fixtures. I'm not the engineer.
Okay.
I'm sitting here, I've done a lot of these. I'm thinking it's 3 based on my experience. Could be 2, I doubt it's 4, but, so just know that I try to be conservative with my estimates, but it's gonna,
But the lighting head that you'll bring will have the 200.
yeah, it'll be, it's an 1150 watt fixture. Produces 121,000 lumens, and it will be an actual.
Just to be clear, will it be one of these?
Yes, correct.
So that's the lighting brochure. So the pole with 3 fixtures on it, which is sort of what we were talking about.
Which is right here on this board.
That's got 4.
We would, you'd bring one of these fixtures so we can kind of see how it would go.
Can I ask a question?
So I just want to, everybody is okay with that? Okay,
Can I
then
ask one
Catherine.
question? You're saying bring 1 fixture, is there any chance you could bring 4 and put them in each corner of a court and really see what the light's gonna be like? It's gonna be hard to figure out what it's really gonna be like if you're only seeing 25% of the light. The poles that are there right now are 40 feet, right?
About
No.
25,
25.
so you're adding another 15. Yes.
Well, there, and just so everybody knows, there is a relationship between the height and the angle. So, you know, the steeper the angle, the less it spill over into the adjoining properties.
Or 2 poles, 1 on each corner of the court, so you see the light coming down both directions at least.
I think just, I don't want to, but I think, you know, if we were to put it, the real problem was with the light shining this direction, not so much this direction. I think if we could put up, you know, there's a pole here with 3 fixtures on it. You know, if we could put, or you pick anyone right here, if we could put the light here.
Annoy me,
And shine it this way, and we could, what we really need to figure out is, from a 40-foot pole here shining this direction, how much spillover is at the property line? And that's the $64,000 question that I think
It'll be more than that, but.
we need to answer. That proposal.
Because there's spillover to our house, which is behind, it's on the other side of Marion Road.
Right,
It's
but
not
I- but-
even abutting.
But I think,
We got plenty of
but I think if
spillage.
we're satisfied that there's no spillover into Elodia's backyard, then
Yeah,
it's certainly
that's
not
right.
gonna
Yeah.
get as far as your side of the street.
You're all welcome.
So anyway, okay, I want to move on to the field lighting.
You got one more
Okay,
question from
sorry,
Russ.
Russ.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, there is no doubt in my mind, okay? If you look at one small sample like that, yeah, you can say, well, this looks pretty good. But before you make a final decision, you have to see it in action where there's a number of these lights, and then make a value judgment. To me, I hate to say this, but it's irresponsible making a decision based on such a small sample size.
Well, we did ask, but we did ask for other installations in the Boston area for us to go visit.
Great, no,
So
that's what we should do.
So we're gonna actually get to see it in the actual installation and look at that, but we also wanna see it here in our specific instance. So I think if we have both of those.
That's great.
Then we at least have a
Absolutely.
baseline to make a decision going forward. Okay, any more questions on the court lighting? Can we move on to the field lighting? Okay, so I'm gonna ask, so if anybody cares about tennis, they can go. So what's proposed, what is being currently proposed for lighting the field inside the track?
Well,
Well, maybe we should go back to what we were originally proposing
3 years ago, which was HID lighting, 50-foot candles for the field, 4-pole system.
So we initially were talking about, I think you had poles here, here, and here and here.
Is it gonna be secondary lighting for the track? For the main lights would be off if people were walking on the track. There'd be lower level lighting for those. We never got far enough into the design to figure out whether we were gonna actually have lights lower down on the poles and install additional lower poles for the corners of the track to just keep that, you know, so the whole track would have some level of lower lighting, or whether we would just use fixtures on. We never got that far, but we knew that at some point we were gonna have 2 levels of lighting. One was gonna be for people walking the track, the other was just gonna be for lighting the sports field.
And those, just if I could just, so the 4 poles, how many fixtures, height of the poles and how many fixtures per pole?
They would have been, they would have matched what's at Victory. The other Victory ones are 80. There's one 90-foot pole at Victory. These would have been the same height.
With how many fixtures per?
I don't think we even, it never got that far. The design never went to the point where they figured out how many fixtures were going to be on each pole. So it was,
sure.
What did you mean by two levels? I mean, the same pole would have 2 sets of lights?
yeah, in the past, we've actually installed additional lights, you know, like at 30 or 40 feet.
Yeah,
for
on the same
track,
pole.
yes. Lower down on the pole, but you don't, the technology's gotten better now, and I don't think you have to do that, but that was 3 years ago. I mean, nobody was doing LED 3 years ago either, so really what we were doing 3 years ago, a lot has changed anyway, so, I mean, Mike can speak better to that, but I at least wanted to give, you know, an indication of what we were originally planning.
So if I can ask Mike, so what, you know, what would you guys install if you were to?
Based on what I've felt in this room tonight.
Love.
I would walk out.
You're getting smart, Mike.
You know, because light control, because this is such a sensitive area, what I would propose would be a 6-pole system, because when you only have 4 poles, each pole is responsible for lighting 1 quadrant. So that makes that distance that you have to shoot light even further. If you use more poles, the lights can, you don't have to shoot light as far. So the control is better, the glare is, you know, everything's just much more controlled. It's a much better lighting design with more sources. Now, that being said, you're still, and I'm just based on Google Earth, I hadn't seen that drawing with the extra wide chute area and the top there.
So, you know, just be clear, we only need to light the playing field, we don't need to light, we're not doing track meets at night.
Right, but I'm worried about pole locations, because we still have to get light to the center of the field.
Council.
Yes, Peter.
I'm sorry, I never thought we decided that we weren't gonna have night track meets.
What?
Peter,
I'm looking at, no, seriously, when we talked about that, I was just, is the track and field coach here?
Yeah.
Yes, we've never had night.
I understand we haven't had.
Within the league, we've never had track.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine,
Okay,
I just
just
asked
I
him a
just wanna
question.
make, so the league has never had night track meets, and we're not planning on doing night track meets this time?
At night.
So, okay,
Just ask him the question.
okay. Yeah, so that makes it a little bit, so anyway, so what you're saying is because the lights are here, you gotta be able to shine over the track.
You still have to get to the center of the field. So that's a hard distance. It's a set distance. Without, just based on the Google image I saw, you've got about 175 feet from where a pole can be located just outside the track to the center of the field.
Actually, I think you can have lights inside the track, because we've got, those are well outside of any safe zone for the running of the track and for the field itself. So they could probably be located in there. You wouldn't be able to, only if you were doing a 4-pole system, not 6, because you'd have the long jump, triple jump in the middle.
Yeah.
But you could, if you were doing a 4-pole system, you could get 2 poles in there Wouldn't have to be on the opposite side of the straightaway.
So you could put a pole here, here,
That's what I'm thinking.
here, and here?
Yeah. It would be outside of any safe zone requirement.
Who are we lighting this track for? May I ask that question?
We're not, we're talking about lighting the field.
No, who are we lighting the field for? I would like to know.
Well, the field is being lit, as I understood it, for school athletics.
I have all the schedules here and all the teams. Which team, please?
Field hockey.
Soccer.
Soccer?
Yep, because one time there was a
Okay,
game.
hold on a second.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm asking Mike Lee.
Yeah, high school we use it for, right now we use it for sub-varsity soccer. When the varsity teams play, the JV teams play at the same time. In most cases, we can't always do that because we don't have lights on the oval. So what happens is a team comes in, if we have a 7 o'clock varsity soccer game, we're playing a 5:30 JV game on the oval. And we just run into difficulties late in the year with lighting on that field. Very often games are cut short because of the darkness.
Schedule right now, Mike, on the JV team, the games start at 3:45.
That's not true.
Well,
That's not
that's your
true.
schedule for 2000, it's posted right now on MIAA.
Well, I don't post my schedules on MIA. I post them on Schedule Star. Some schools post them on MIA, so that's
So
not a
this is
full-
Watertown that I pulled off.
Yeah, because other schools are putting in their schedules on the MIA. I use Schedule Star. I have several 7 o'clock games. Most of them are at 7 o'clock. I'll send you a copy tonight.
I'd really appreciate it, because I
Sure.
feel like I'm totally in the dark on this.
We
When
play-
I pulled every schedule for the teams, and I'm not seeing it.
Okay, but you're pulling it off MIA.
Right, well, that's what you keep referring to, so that's what I went to.
Okay, we have our own set of schedules at Watertown.
Okay, just to be, so you haven't posted any of your schedules on MIA?
I don't. I use Schedule Star it's just a different
Okay.
scheduling mechanism. I use Schedule Star. Some schools use Schedule Star, some use MIA. I prefer to use Schedule Star right now. And we play, many of our games are at 7 o'clock. Okay? This is high school varsity. High school varsity, 7 o'clock games.
So just, okay, I don't wanna get
No,
bogged
that's
down in
fine.
this, but so other teams, so like other teams that are playing us may post.
Right, that's why that's coming up. What Elodie is seeing is other people use the MIA to schedule games. When they input their schedule there, it'll show up as Watertown having a game, but they inputted that. There are 3:45 games. I'm not saying that's not the case. But many of our games are 7 o'clock. Our boys soccer schedule, this is the multiple things we're trying to get on the turf at Victory Field and having a heck of a time trying to do it.
Okay.
In terms of all the different teams. So we play a lot of night games.
Well, all the boys soccer varsity is on the turf field in the stadium, according to this
Right,
schedule.
but there's a JV game that goes with that. A bus comes over, brings a JV team and a varsity team. The bus comes, 2 teams get off. One goes to the turf, one goes to the oval. That's how most of the high schools in the Middlesex League do it, to save on transportation costs. Sending 2 teams over on the same bus, it's cost effective instead of sending 2 separate buses.
Tony and then Elliot and then Peter.
Can we just have let's have the discussion before we and then make a decision whether we're going to light the field. I thought we are going to light the field, but can we just say that that's the discussion right now, is whether we're going to light the field? And people can speak to that.
So you're, okay, Elliot?
Question, what lumens, if that's the right word, you have 2 general kinds of uses. People walking around the track, apparently track meets, just walking, so that's one level. I don't know how much you have to light that. Then you have varsity soccer, and what are the sports?
Right now, pretty much JV soccer goes with that. Most of our field hockey games are in the afternoon, so it's
Soccer.
pretty much soccer.
Okay, so what kind of, how many lumens, to light a soccer game and to light the walking track, what do you need for that? How many lumens? And, I mean, you don't need to read small print in a contract that enslaves us for 40 years. But what's what kind of lighting does, lumens the right word?
Foot candles is
I'm sorry.
what typically referred to as. So most turf fields, you see that the
Grass.
50-foot candles is a standard. just because that's usually what most people default to, mainly because, especially if lacrosse is anywhere in the equation, because you have a very small object at a very fast rate of speed. You know, if it was soccer only, it's anywhere between 30 and 50 foot candles. 30 would be an absolute minimum. I personally wouldn't recommend playing lacrosse on a 30-foot candle field. Little League Baseball has safety standards, lighting standards. They recommend, and these are only 9 to 12-year-olds, they recommend 50-foot candles for the infield of a baseball field. It's a very similar sized object, probably have very similar rates of speed at times. So here again, short answer, 30 to 50.
You had a document there that was a soccer, U.S. soccer.
I stole it
It's on the website.
somewhere here.
The U.S. soccer. Right there.
It was given to me.
Okay, I think page 2, 3, or 4, there's a table.
So with no spectator concerns, the minimum would be 30 foot.
30 foot candle. So I guess this may be just the first question. What's the right foot candle? And then the other question is, what's the design illumination for the phase 1 field?
Can I read this though for you, Vinny? Standard here, competition, no special spectator considerations, is 30-foot candles. Premium for tournaments up to 5,000 spectators, which we're expecting in Watertown soon, is 50-foot candles. So I think we could probably go a little lower if we should even be lighting the field.
Okay, well,
Yes, back to the first question. So
okay, well, this is just this one technical question. So
the
what's phase 1 design criteria?
That was 50-foot candles, and one thing that is missing in this discussion, if you're ever planning on, and I don't say that you are on this field, but the Victory Phase 1 is 50-foot candle, because in order to record or tape or video any games or anything like that, you need 50-foot candle.
It's not like you blend.
You also have baseball. as
We don't have
part of it.
baseball in this field.
No, I'm just saying, that was Victory Phase
Yeah.
1. This field, if you're not gonna record any games, and
So that's sort of the, okay, so I just wanted to be clear, 50 versus 30, which
So
is,
the outfield area on phase 1 is lit to an average of actually about 35 foot candles.
what's the football field?
Football field is an average of 50.
Because these are the poles that are causing the issue.
okay. So I just, okay, Peter.
Just a couple of things. In terms of the Victory, I'm not worried about video cameras, but in terms of Victory, the multi-purpose field was 50 because we do play lacrosse, number one. Number two, in addition to the high school, we want to be able to use Victory inside the oval for youth sports. As you were well aware, last year, youth soccer wanted to put temporary lighting at the Arsenal Park. That wasn't turned away, but obviously there's a critical need for lighting in Watertown. The other thing that's happening that people have to understand is that, for the most part, hasn't been approved, but in 18-19, the school year will probably start 35 minutes later. So there's going to be a huge crunch. I think, Mike has talked about the games, but you got to understand, right now the high school teams finish 9:15 sometimes, and so hopefully we want the lights on the other field so we could balance out, hopefully get the high school kids out at 7 and then open it up to the youth groups. One of the comment I will make that we made this concession 3.5 years ago, but again, everything kind of is, we had said we would make sure the lights on the field would be shut down at 9 and that we would not rent it out to any outside group. And that was already a concession that we talked about 3 years ago, but a lot of things we did 3 years ago. So basically the focus would be high school, school department, youth groups, shut the lights down at 9 o'clock, and no rentals for outside groups.
Okay. Thanks. So
Second
Mike.
part to the question, so one of the big advantages to LED is you can dim it. So for walking at night, if you have a, let's say a 30-foot candle field, you can have it at 30-foot candles, you can press a button and it goes to 15, you can press another button and it goes down to 5. So even at, and that's the entire field would be lit to an average of 5-foot candles. So you could, it'd be a very, like whether you're throwing a frisbee in the middle of the field and walking around it, it's just a very uniform, low level of lighting that costs virtually nothing to operate, but would provide a safe environment.
Can I would just follow up on that. Right now, and again, if you look at this thing, so there are, there's 4 N-Star floodlights here that are security lighting, which are on 40-foot poles that are just shine literally straight out. And those do shine in people's windows, and those are on all night because they're just on a photo cell. And those are sort of security lighting. I would propose that our recommendation on this committee is that all those N-Star flood lamps, and there's one here on the top lot, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's one here shining this way, and there's 3 over here. That those, I would like to think that this committee would recommend all those N-Star flood lamps, right, should be removed. I am intrigued by the idea that if we were to put poles for lighting the field for soccer play, they'd be off at 9. The track lighting, putting them at a lower level, say 15-foot candles, say up till 10 o'clock at night, because the park is open to 10 o'clock at night. So anybody walking the track as a casual user would have some lighting, as Ann had pointed out. And that after 10 o'clock at night, could we dim it down to a much lower level, say 5-foot candles, to provide security lighting and eliminate all the floodlights. So I just want to maybe, based on what Mike said, is that a potential option that we could look at and provide sort of a, because there are lights on that field, okay? And the lights on that field are just not great at all. They're too dim to use for playing, and they're too bright and shine into your houses as security lights. So can we find a solution that actually allows the high school teams to play, the youth sports teams to play potentially till 9 o'clock, provide enough lighting for casual track users to walk the track for exercise till 10 o'clock at night, and still provide some level of security lighting, from 10 p.m. till sunrise, for the police to, when they drive in, then make sure nobody's fooling around on the field. So I just throw that out there as a discussion to the committee.
Okay.
And I'll start with the lawyer.
We have a lot of light already along Orchard Street, and we haven't talked about the configuration of I don't even know what to call it anymore. It's not a road because it's long gone on Google Maps. We still haven't figured out that configuration for some kind of lighting. I'm getting a little overwhelmed again with light. And it's like we're doing everything piecemeal and not looking at the entire package. Now, I've been out there 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have plenty of light to be walking around. So I'm not sure where all this nervousness is of coming with light all of a sudden, of security and all these things. I think you could do some good lighting along the area between the 2 fields that people are coming in and out of. You have the street lighting. We have street lighting that pours in from Marion Road. I just really would like, and again, I'm going to ask you, Mike, to go back to your partner in Massachusetts who's going to kill you, you do know that, to see some examples of these things. I need to see examples, because it's all pie in the sky right now, and this lighting issue, as I said, is very tough.
So, Tony.
I'm sort of feeling like we're bouncing around a little bit, so I make this motion as a way to focus the discussion.
Okay, sorry.
I would like to make a motion.
Mike.
It feels like we're bouncing around a little bit, and so I make this motion so that we can just come up with one decision about this, and then we can talk about where. I make a motion that we are going to light, we agree that we are going to light the field.
Or for soccer?
We're going to light the field. That's what we're going to do.
Okay, is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, discussion.
I feel again, this is piecemeal. A year ago, we talked about lights in Philipello Park. Have they been lit? Have they been done? The fields are going to be lit there for additional lighting for youth soccer. We have Arsenal Park coming up. There's an opportunity to put lights in there. There are no butters so close by. Again, why is it all coming to Victory? I can't help it, Tony. I'm really sorry about this. You know?
Yeah, so when I say, I assume that people use the track all times up until 10 o'clock, and maybe they sneak on and use the track. So after 10 o'clock, when the park is officially closed, don't we need to light the track? We're not talking about lighting the track and then lighting the field, right? We're talking about lighting that area so that when people walk around the track, there's some light. Is that right? Okay, so I'll make the motion that we're talking about lighting the field and the oval track so there's some light. Now, I don't see what's wrong with that if this is supposed to be a park that's used more, not only by the athletes and by youth. And I do want to say that I have been in a number of meetings, in addition to the ones that we ran as the Committee on Human Services, dealing with the issue of lit fields in order to make sure that we have enough places for our youth soccer and our youth lacrosse. And I think that we need to provide as much possibility for those folks to play and have their practices and their games. So I do think that we should light the fields for not only that, but also for everybody who might want to use the fields at 9 o'clock on a fall evening. So I would like to make the motion that we light the fields and the surrounding track. I think there was a second to that.
Okay, any other discussion? Mike?
Yeah. I just looked up our boys' schedule. I just got that on schedule site. Just to give you an idea, we play 7 out of our 9 varsity games at either 6 or 7 o'clock at night. Okay, so that's at least the timeliness of that. We, as Peter mentioned, we are going to a later school start next September. That's coming. Okay, it's at least 35 minutes later than when we get out right now. We get out of school at 2:30. We're going to be out of school at 3:05. That's going to have an impact on pushing everything later. It's the educational research of kids starting later to have educational success. That's coming a year from September. It's going to have a huge impact on athletics across the state. It's happening in quite a few areas. So that's going to have an impact on pushing later at night. Unfortunately, I would like to have everybody done at 5 o'clock, go home, eat, and do their studies. But it's the reality of what's coming down to us in terms of the things that are passed on to us and how it impacts our program.
Peter?
I just had a question in terms of the lighting of the track. You know, I didn't want to get into, but the poles, you could have certain lights dedicated for the field and certain lights dedicated for the track. Is that true in the new school? You know, I know it has to be designed, but that's a possibility. Okay.
So double poles?
Thank you.
No.
No, it's just on the same pole.
Okay, so what's the consensus? Are we going to,
Are we going to hear from the audience?
did anybody want to, okay.
I just had
Okay, sorry, Kate had her hand up first.
I just had a question about, well, first off,
Just say your name, just say your name
oh,
for the
yes,
camera.
Kate Coyne, Watertown. I wanted to first agree with, we need to look at this holistically. The Arsenal field is coming up also, and you know, that's an opportunity to look at the bettering those fields. Those fields are in disarray to start with, and we should be looking also at other venues. That the community around Phase 1 Victory Field Park has, you know, has taken a brunt of lighting, and that's just my first statement. This question, it has to do with the if potential lighting, because the nice man from Musco stated something about poles, if they were inside the track, there would be less glare, is that correct? Because they would be more direct? And if so, what's the dimension of the field? Because if you had the poles inside the field, What would the impact be on the dimensions of the field with the buffer space?
No impact on the field size. We're outside the actual safe zones of the field.
Okay, so
all
soccer,
football.
under yard field by,
Doesn't impact at all on the field. That
So-
area where the area we have those benches pushes the field in anyway on that
Uh-huh.
side, and the other side we have the long jump, triple jump, and then on each end we have open space.
So if you put them
within the row.
inside?
So it really doesn't affect the field size.
but it does affect the glare.
It should reduce the glare because the poles are closer and shorter. Is that correct?
And my third point is, I'm wondering about security also, because do all the other fields in Watertown have those lights also? I mean, I can understand maybe some lights over by Victory football field, but you know, it's nice to have some dark light around the homes too. So I would say less is more, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? I think Susan had her hand up next, and then I'll take Ann, and then
Other than the
Dan.
field lighting lights for the whole park itself, I wasn't thinking that they were gonna play at night at Victory. I thought perhaps that the whole community, the whole town had to vote on this, because it would be a variance issue. Is that, like, it's not a variance issue at all? Okay. Next, then, since we don't, the town people don't get to vote on it at all, whether we want lights or not, sports at Victory Field versus other parks to be utilized, since we have about, what, 5, 6, or 7, I'm not sure exactly the amount. But we could divide up all these other parks and do other sporting activities, rather than just have everybody come right to Victory Field all the time. It's always Victory Field, Victory Field, Victory Field. We have so many other things, so many other parks to go look at, but we should be probably renovating as well, other than just Victory Field. I don't know how much money there is, how much there is for a budget. My other third thing was, that I had just given to Elodie. I had written it a few days ago, I gave it to Tony about the lighting issues. I wanted to make it more, okay, athletic for sure, but also something for the residences to enjoy. Like lanterns, like we have at the public gardens. We don't have to have that many. The lanterns at the public gardens can have the incandescent lights. They're not all that high. They can light up the track. We can do, a sprinkling, a few here. They have 2 beautiful hanging plants for those lights. And make it beautiful, make it aesthetic. And that could be for the people that walk the track. Not for the players on the sports field, but for the track itself. I think it would be gorgeous. It's a great idea. I said it a couple of years ago, I guess, to Vinnie, to Tony, to Elodie. I don't know how much you all paid attention to me, but I think it's something we can all consider. And as far as junior varsity games, that's the middle school, I take it?
No, that's
Or
high
the
school,
high school?
ninth,
Sorry,
10th
so it's
grades,
not
yeah,
10th.
11th.
Okay, so, but I was just thinking lower age groups. But when I grew up as a kid, we had all those other parks that, but everybody lives at Victory Field. We have all those kids that live at the east end, the west end. So there's, if you join them together, there's other parks in the whole community that have lots of space to bring the students to, not just Victory. But, I don't know what the direct abutters feel about all this. I think we should all have a big vote, the direct abutters, and all the community people who live on Lowell Road, Standish Road, Catherine Road, Marion Road, Marshall Street, behind the park, how they think. I want everybody to be happy. I think it's a fresh start for everybody, but I think we should have it for the sports people and for the residents. I think it should be a combination of a park for everybody to enjoy, not just sports. I mentioned you probably didn't see my email yet, because it was about 9 pages long. And it's about having the stadium, the football field, having maybe concerts for adults there. I happen to know somebody that performs. He's wonderful. He sings like Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett, and his name is Joey Quezada.
We'll take that.
Anyway,
But
all those
listen,
things.
we got
Let's reel it in, babe.
I think
But
Ann had her hand up, and then Dan, and then Dick. Go ahead, Ann.
No, I understand that Victory is the closest to the high school, so I do respect that. But I don't understand why when anybody says, why aren't we looking at other fields to add more lighting? Because, we already have the football field, and now we're talking the new lights on the basketball court and the tennis court. Why, nobody ever answers this question. Why can't we really talk about putting lights at another field for a JV soccer team? If the bus is coming from another town, they can drop off the varsity drive over to Philipello or Arsenal and drop them off there. Why do we have to have them at Victory?
Did, maybe Peter or Mike?
I'll let Mike go second. The first thing, we do have in our capital budget, and Ann, you've been a great neighbor, so thank you. I know it's frustrating, so I appreciate it. The first question is, we do have in the capital budget for this year, and it'll be up to the town council to improve new lights at Philipello Grove side, which is currently lit, as well as adding additional lighting at Philipello Arlington side. In terms of the high school, I'll defer to Mike, but again, just having the complex with not the press box, the field house and everything right there just makes it more convenient for the high school athletes. There's a lot of problems that I'll let Mike go into, getting somebody who's on a JV freshman team going all the way to Philipello. I don't know if the softball coach is here. He left, but they used the girls softball. Oh, you want to tell them about the girls softball, what used to be, how hard it used to be for you?
I played at Philipello Park because it was the only design field that had dirt in the infield. That's what a softball field is. It's distinctly different from the Little League field. And our kids used to have to go from the high school to Philipello Park, which is almost going into Brighton to do that. And the other difficulty was there was transportation for other Middlesex League teams coming into Philipello Park. No matter where they parked, they'd have to walk a country mile to get to the field. And so, several years ago, it was developed into the Hosmer Field, where Little League no longer exists. We used the recreation department and the DPW designed a field for us at Hosmer Field. It's a regulation softball field now. It's made it completely easy for the kids. It's the same distance from the high school to the Hosmer as it is from the high school to Victory Field. So it's a very easy adjustment for our kids, and it's better for the Middlesex League, and it's just been an overall better experience for everybody.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Jim. We worked on that, moving sports out of Philipello. As he said, it may not seem like a long, I was worried about the safety piece, may not seem like a long walk, but that's kind of a desolate area over there, and I was concerned with our high school girls walking over there. We do not transport our athletes to practice. We do transport them to games away, but we don't provide buses down to the rink or to anything in Watertown. Kids have to get there on their own. And I wasn't too happy with the safety piece of kids going down into that area by themselves at times, or if they were staying after for extra help, they might end up going down there by themselves. So I didn't think it was a safe thing. We made the move back to Hosmer to bring it back there, and it's been a pretty good move. Plus, Jim felt for the community that it was more for the kids, that it was kind of, everybody could see it. Victory Field, the kids play down there. How many people from the neighborhood come down to watch games and things? It's a recreational area. It's a visibility area for kids. In Philipello, nobody would come to games for softball, and the kids felt like they were in another world down there. So that's why we made the move there.
Okay, Dan and then Dick.
Dan Gross from Hawthorne Street. Apart from a couple of comments just in the last few minutes, one would think, listening to the discussion here, that more light, apart from the effect on abutters, that more light is an unalloyed good. It's always better if things are lit up and brighter. And I don't think that's actually the case. And I'm not even sure, this issue of security lights, I'm not even sure. I think I have heard that it's a myth that you actually stop crime by lighting things up. So I don't even think that we're helping crime if that's the goal of some of this lighting, like having lighting all night long at some low level. I don't think that solves anything. There are some people in town, and I'm one of them, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, that actually appreciates darkness. I go into the woods all the time, and so far you guys haven't talked about lighting it up, thank God. And I really enjoy the darkness. Unfortunately, we do get the light from the various fields, but darkness has a lot of benefits. It's enjoyable. It's also not creating light pollution, which affects other people all over the city. And of course, as you know, we could ask the police department, but I don't think that the fact that we've had security lights at Victory Field has pushed crime into the woods. I feel safe there all the time, any hour of the day. Now, of course, whether or not we put in lights, you might decide to have lights anyway, and for other reasons, like for games. But then there's the issue of you could still talk about, well, do we want lights that are best, let's say, to have low levels of lighting for certain hours after sports for people who are on the track? Well, then maybe you would choose something different. So it's not just a management of the light, but what you actually decide to buy. Maybe you want to have lights that are embedded in the track so that people can find their way, but we're not trying to light the whole thing so that a police officer can come once an hour and scan to make sure there's not someone doing something bad there. I don't know if we really need that much after the sports.
Dick O'Connor, 81 Channing Road. I'm all for having some evening games and practices, but I don't know why that means we have to have the lights on this field on every night. Just because there are some evening games, some practices. Why can't we have them turned off when there aren't any evening games or practices? Well, we already have lights for the walkers. Why couldn't we have some kind of portable lighting that could be put up, turned on when there's a game, turned off when they're not, and then take it and removed at the end of the fall and spring season? And so I'm trying to get away from these enormous light poles. And I realize my only frame of reference is the initial, the baseball and football field. But I mean, my goodness, they tower over the community and judge and convict everyone a half mile in three directions there. And I think they constitute cruel and unusual punishment for people who live there. But what I want to ask is, why are we being punished? I mean, when does it stop being about just athletics and recreation and become about something else entirely, like power?
Sure. So, Chris Tatry, I live on Thurrock Park. I just wanted to tell everyone too, I've been to all the meetings, well, except the first one, and I hear everything that all the abutters have to go through, and it does puzzle me sometimes as to why, like, the lights on the courts and stuff have to be on until 10 o'clock at night. I mean, that said, there is a field capacity problem, and there is a later school start time that's coming down the road. And I can tell you, like, my daughter has played field hockey in town. My wife actually coached the middle school team, and, you know, there is a field capacity issue. I mean, they play at Salt and Stall behind here, the middle school team. And, you know, I mean, you know, I think my wife's talked to you about it. I mean, they've been accused of, it's not a regulation-sized field. And I mean, they've been accused by other coaches of cheating or trying to, like, you know, you're playing on this field because it gives you an advantage because it's too small. It's not a regulation-sized field. And then this fall we went out and we had I was surprised that a couple games got called because of darkness in October. And I mean, again, I think I'm 100% with the abutters and the light pollution. And I think other towns, Lexington just agreed to light all their 3 turf fields that they have. But they talked to the abutters and they're shutting them down at 8:30. You know, so I think, you know, it's important to do both, but I think people have to understand there's a peak time. I mean, right now I have to pick my daughter up sometimes, you know, well, after 9. I don't want her on the field at 9. I mean, I don't want my kids hanging out down at Vic between 9 and 10. You know what I mean? And so I understand that, but I think people also have to understand that, like, you know, we have some real issues in town about having enough fields for the kids to play on too. So that's the only point I really want to make.
My name is Deborah Fenardi-Seuss. I live on 16 Morrison Road. I used to live on the south side, and I used to use Casey Park a lot. And we really welcomed a lot of the changes and the facilities, the skating park, as well as the new tennis courts and the lighting for the baseball field when my son was in, when he was playing baseball, and not totally soccer now. So in terms of Victory Field, I utilize it, my son utilizes it, and it's really important that there is that lighting for them on the oval, because last year he was really disappointed. He made varsity, he couldn't play that well, he played down to JV. They had a game that started, I believe, at 4:30 or 5 or something, and the game had to be called because of lighting. It was a safety issue. Now, mind you, those were JV kids that came from either, I can't even think of what town, either Reading or something. They had to wait around for the varsity kids who started at 7 o'clock. And I felt for those kids having to, play at different times, whereas if there was the lighting, they could have started their game at the same time that the varsity game, the team started. So that's my input. Just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Okay, hold on a second. Jim and then Susan.
I guess I can only speak for myself, but I think it's true for a number of people that are abutters, that there's really no resentment and no resistance to having lighting, to having fields that are appropriate for student athletics. And I really don't think that that's an issue. I think there are other issues about how lighting is done. I think we know there's issues about parking and stuff, but I don't think anyone in the neighborhood resents having fields that are appropriate for the athletic department. I just wanted to say that.
Susan Flint, Bradford Road. When you get to talking about parking, or when we get to talking about parking, are you going to address lighting for the parking areas then? Because I think that is something that needs to be thought about, particularly since the parking is utilized in the winter. People arriving at 11 o'clock at night, and so I'm not a proponent of ridiculous amounts of light, but at some point, the lighting for the parking for the neighborhood does need to be addressed.
I'll just say, when we talk about the parking, we will talk about that. Right now, there's only one street light, which is on this pole right here. But there are floodlights. There's floodlight here, floodlights that sort of light up the general area. But I think if if the committee, which I heard, is that we would be in favor of sort of removing those big N-Star industrial floodlights and put some more appropriate sort of lighting, that I think will take care of. But I think we will have to take up parking lot lighting when we talk about parking. Just Peter, before you do that, anybody else from the public want to? Okay. Okay.
Is there any design that you've ever made that's from the base up on the ground to light up and, distance instead of these great big poles? I have no idea if there's lighting. I know they do it for landscaping, they light up the trees, but is there something for recreational use that would be in the base of the ground with light distance, all the way around the oval area that anybody ever has designed?
If I could just answer that, the problem with that is shining up into people's houses, which is what we don't want.
Not upwards, but is there a design that would go outwards?
It's glare, you're gonna get glare.
Okay, so let's go back to the committee. So Peter.
Just very quickly, and I know, thank God, and hopefully we're not going to talk about parking today, but obviously there's a major lighting issue with the parking. And again, not to keep on referring to 2014, we had a whole lighting schematic that is low-level lights on the parking area, because I know it's a big thing during the winter. Secondarily, Mr. Gumby here will make another concession that we did make 3.5 years ago, that we really need the lights on during the academic year, per se, and that really covers, other than, really December, January, February, but during the fall and the spring. During the summer, we had proposed, didn't get any place, not to have the lights go on the oval at all on the field, not the track, because there were really no need. Once you got to June, July, and August, you really didn't need the lights going on. So that's another piece that I want to put out there. We wouldn't really need it. It's really needed during I would say, the academic time where there's high school sports and youth sports going on. So that's another kind of caveat I wanted to.
Before Tony and Steve, if I could just follow up on that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be our understanding that any lights on the field would only be turned on if the field was reserved for practice or game. So if the high school doesn't have the field scheduled for practice or game, the lights, and youth sport, like youth soccer doesn't have it reserved for a game, the lights would be off. So the lights would only be programmed to be on because we have this great electronic programming system. That if the field is programmed for the high school to be used till 7 p.m. on Monday, the lights go off at 7 p.m. If nobody's scheduled to use the field on Tuesday, those field lights don't turn on Tuesday. If youth soccer is going to use the field from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., then the lights would turn off, be programmed to turn off at 8 p.m. They would only be programmed on if there was a field, youth, high school, school athletic, or youth sports team reserved to use the field at that time. Is that a correct statement?
I'm sorry, Council, I would say no. And the reason being, and again, I can't be Gumby too much, basically what happens, just for this scenario, so first of all, if we did have lights, youth soccer would be using it, most of the time it would be used. But if it wasn't scheduled, just say for instance, the high school is on the field till 8 o'clock in October. No one has access to that field. So one of the things we would like to have is informal opportunity for play for our residents. So the oval would be open for somebody just to, I mean, the high school kind of gets beat up that we have this sharing thing, that's another issue, that the high school does not share their field when they have it. So if they have the reserve, if they have the turf field scheduled till 8, there's no opportunity for anybody to kick a ball around and so on and so forth. So I would say, I would still like to keep the field lights on for informal play, or somebody just, kicking the ball around.
Okay,
Until what time, Peter?
9 p.m.
I think 9 is the maximum. Wody, the thing is, 9 o'clock would be the cutoff. It's a good question, but that's...
I just want to be clear. That was it. Okay, Tony, and I think then Steve, and then Elliot.
Well, that was my concern too. I mean, we talk about the park being used for other people besides athletes and sports, and it seems to me that if there's a bunch of kids who want to go out and throw a frisbee, and there's no game and there's no reason that the lights shouldn't be on. I mean, the field should be able to be used by everybody, not just sports. I mean, so not just the high school folks and the team sports. It's a huge field. It could be used to kick a ball around you on, or have an informal game, or and I don't know why we would say no, you can't do that. And I assume that the lighting question is that we can light the track and light the field separately.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So that if you decide to okay, it's 9 o'clock and no one should be using the field. I mean, they could use the field, but there'd be no lights on it. That's up to them, up to this committee. But if people are still circling around, they can still have some light. Okay. So
I think Steve has his hand up, and then Elliot.
Yeah, I was just going to add a quick comment on that. I think we have an increasingly aging population, and one of the issues that I hear a lot about is, places and opportunities for them to feel that there's a place that they can walk and get some exercise that is, a stable, smooth surface that's lit, that they don't, aren't worried about tripping and falling, and, obviously the track, when it's not being used for other purposes, is a perfect example for that. And I think having some light there, at least in the transition evening hours, is really important to accommodate that use.
Okay, Elliot.
Mark, what's how much do you think youth soccer would use? What do you think the usage for youth soccer would be of the field?
Well, today, what we.
I mean, when it's lit, if it's lit.
Well, if it shuts down at 9, and what Michael and what Peter are saying is that the JV team, for the most part, would use it, because the way the schedule goes now, the high school block books 2 to 8, and so for all intents and purposes, 2 to 8 would go to the high school pretty much out of the gate. So our utilization, we spend a lot of time at Philip Hello, Elliot. We spend a lot of time you know, we try and shoehorn it in lots of different places. I guess the one thing that I would say just around, less around youth soccer, and I think I've just kind of taken in a lot of this, it is the only track in town, right? So, you know, there's the reality of that when you kind of look at kind of what this is, and I guess just to hijack your comment, Elliot, was it's a finite amount of time, right? So, you know, when you think about when you would have to light it, it would realistically be September, October, right? And so and November, so weeks in November, right? So I think, but outside of that, I don't think we're talking about lighting it kind of post-September, November through, let's say, April, it's kind of spring, and then everything plays, and it kind of plays out. I don't know if, I think there's a little bit of math to be done. I think somebody had mentioned around utilization of the fields. I personally think systemically, that fixes part of our problem, figuring out how we best utilize the resources. So when we focus just primarily on the oval, it feels like we're directing everything to the oval, which necessarily isn't the case. I think it's more of a systemic problem across the board.
Tony.
I'd like to make the following motion so we can come to some decision. This is not a motion about what type of lights, because I'm not sure what type of, or how many poles and how many fixtures in each pole. But I would like to make the motion that we light the field and the track. That we light the field up till 9 o'clock. And that we light the track up to closing time at 10 o'clock. And what type of lights we can discuss, but that the field is lit for people to use besides the athletes from sports and high school and schools, and so that people can use the field whenever they like up to 9 o'clock. And if they want to stay until 10, that's fine, but they have no lights. So that's the motion, that we light the field and we light the track. The field lighting stops at 9 o'clock. The track lighting stops at 10 o'clock.
Absolutely stops, no dim lights then.
That's what I'm suggesting.
I just wanna-
I'm just putting that out there. That's the motion. So do we have a second and then a discussion?
Just two clarifications. to
Okay.
that. One is, would the field not be lit from the beginning of November
The field is
to the end
lit.
of March? Or I just.
The field is lit, all, but the motion is that the field is lit.
Even, I'm just trying to get some
Yes.
idea, even during the winter, would we be lighting the
Yes,
field? when
yes.
there's
If people want to play on it, if they want to have a slide on it, they want to build snowmen on it,
Okay,
they can do that.
and then the second, just in the second follow-up, we say, the track won't be lit to 10 PM. It was gonna be our intention.
Can I just one clarify just on that before the fields, the grass fields are closed. So if it's a grass field, you're not supposed to be on the field. So that's probably
Well,
one thing.
when's, that's my question, when are the grass fields are closed from, what, November 1st to?
No. Generally, the grass fields, give or take, DPW decides, but generally, I think youth soccer, you'll finish in mid-November, so usually we go to Thanksgiving.
We finish mid-October, and so fields normally close after.
Yeah, we don't, we generally,
Mid-November to mid-March?
correct. Flexible on the
So,
weather.
if I could just amend Tony's motion to say the fields will be lit up to 9 PM as long as the grass fields are not closed.
It's fine, man.
Okay, so is everybody okay with that?
About the walking up to 10, is that all right?
And I guess, my other question is, if we were to have all the lights off by 10 PM, then there'd be no security lighting to.
Well, and then say that, though. No, I think I thought, I'm just talking, the motions is,
Okay.
we could, I think we should look at security
Okay,
lighting, maybe the
that's
lanterns. but
My
we could do
question
that
is
when
about
the-
security light, okay, we take security lighting up as a separate
Right.
issue. Okay, so that's the motion, is there a second? Okay, any discussion?
I'm still confused, may I ask a question?
Yes.
I think Peter said before, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's the fall season, the September through November season, and then there's the spring, whenever the spring sports start. Is that late March?
Roughly March 17th.
March through June, through the end of school.
Right.
So the big area that you're looking for relief of the grass field is that December, January, February period, correct?
If it's a grass field, any grass field is shut down. So we shut down the grass fields generally.
Okay, but
It'll
what
take
you mean by
December.
shut down, Peter, is there no teams or
Nobody's allowed.
sports?
Nobody's allowed, even
Nobody's
casual.
allowed. Nobody casual users.
Well, there are casual
Yeah.
users.
Oh, I understand
Okay.
that. but
Okay,
we don't-
so I just want to say that, there are people out there, but we don't, so the question is, are we lighting the field through that season?
No, we just, the motion
So
is
we're not,
amended.
okay, I'm just clarifying, Tony,
Sorry.
it's coming
Sorry.
out of my ears at this point, okay? So if you want me to vote, I need to clarify.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, otherwise, no. Okay, so we are saying that September, October, November, the lights, and March, April, through June, essentially, correct? Just
Well,
want to know, correct?
Well, the motion was not when the fields, but the fields are already closed
Okay.
mid-note, so theoretically, the lights would be on during the summer, unless we decide.
No, I thought Peter said no lights on during the summer because they
Well,
weren't needed.
I said we could offer that, but again, I think Councilor Palumbo and I'm kind of torn
Okay,
here.
just asking, because I
Yeah, I
have that
think to
over
keep
here.
them on till 9, because sometimes the turf field is being used by another, another group. So that's the question back and forth.
Okay.
Okay, any other issues? Okay, I was gonna just ask if anybody from the public wanted to weigh in on that. Susan?
Just a question about early morning use of the track during the dark winter months. 6 a.m., it isn't really light enough to walk. So is that a possibility, just the track? I would say, 6 to 7, November, December, January. Yeah, I don't know exactly, but just ask to put that into the mix.
That's why we do population control with the coyotes.
That's a sort of I think maybe that's sort of a separate discussion that maybe would that be perhaps covered as part of the security lighting? Maybe, let's take that, can we just put a pin in that and take that issue up later?
Just some
Okay, anybody else have any input? Ann?
I just have a quick question, this may be a stupid question, but,
No
I mean, I
stupid
see,
question.
the football field is lit up all the time and nobody's on it. So now we're talking about lighting up the oval. Is there any way, and maybe it's too big of a space to even consider something like this? Like we're talking about, for the basketball court and tennis court, that it's only gonna be lit when being used. Maybe it's not possible.
Well, that was my question. Lit when scheduled, and I guess the feeling was that to give casual users the ability to use the field.
No, and I understand, still some casual users, there's no way to put it on like a, the timer thing like we're talking about on the basketball court. Push button.
I think.
Is it too big of a space?
Technically, I think it's too big a space, it's not sort of controlled.
No, I understand, just wondering, it just seems like we have an awful lot of lights going
Yeah.
on
But,
when nobody's using the field.
Could we have, I want to
Okay, well-
piggyback on Ann's thing quickly.
Okay, Elodia, I will recognize you.
Sorry, Dave. Could we have the track light on then when it's not booked? Because we have no formal games. So there's some ambient light around there, but it's not full blown. That's less invasive. Just trying to figure out
Well,
a happy medium.
Or, again, going back to the booking of the schedule, we could light it when it's scheduled for either school athletics or youth sports, it's 30-foot candles, and then if they're done at 8 p.m., we could drop the lighting down to 15-foot candles, and then at 9 p.m., the lights could go off completely. I mean, we have that capability.
That's getting there. Yeah.
Let's, we could spend an hour talking about programming schedules, but if we could just go back to Tony's motion, just as a general thing with perhaps some timing to be discussed later. Are we all in agreement? Anybody opposed? Okay, let me write this down before I forget.
I really want the clarification on it.
Okay, so I'm gonna put clarification on reducing light level when not scheduled. and just, the later it gets, the slower I write, so just bear with me on that. Yeah, let's, that's something we want to talk about more, but okay, so we've got that established. What do we want to talk about next in terms of, we still haven't figured out the specific, yeah, and we're definitely stopping at 10, so just so everybody knows. So as long as we have the man from Musco here,
Mike from Musco.
what, I guess in order for us to make some additional decisions, we really need to talk about, physically what product we're gonna install. I mean, basically, the type of poles, how big are the poles, where the poles are located, how many fixtures on a pole. And then we can talk about, and I think what I'm hearing from the committee is we wanna have the ability to light the field at probably 2 levels, a 30-foot candle for scheduled play, perhaps 15-foot candles just for casual usage. And then we also want to be able to light this track for casual users all the time up till 10 p.m. So that's I'm just going to throw that out there. It's sort of the 3 levels of lighting, and I'm going to leave security lighting out at this point. So I just want to throw that out there. So field for scheduled play, 30-foot candles. Field for non-scheduled play, say 15-foot candles.
I just have a question.
Low-level track lighting for casual users at whatever the appropriate level will be up to 10 p.m. Is that what we want to do? And first Tony and then Peter.
Well, to the point of not knowing not voting on something or not just agreeing to something until you see it, I don't know what the difference between 30 and 15 is. The point what I'm trying to make here is that field is open to other people besides the athletes from the high school and junior high and from the youth sports. People should be able to use the field. By dropping it to 30 foot candles, it makes it basically unusable, then I wouldn't agree with that. So I need to see what a 30-foot candle is versus what a 15-foot candle, or you're defeating the purpose of the motion.
Well, I guess I'll throw this out there to the lighting guy about for casuals. So like
throwing a frisbee around.
Throwing a frisbee.
15-foot candles. The key to all of it is you're going to have uniformity.
Uniform, right. So
at 30-foot candles, you have a 2-to-1 ratio, 2-to-1 uniformity ratio. So no one point on the field is more than twice as bright as another. So you may have a point that's 40. If that's the highest point, no other point on the field could be 20 or less. So that's that 2-to-1 ratio. If you drop it down to 15, basically it's 50% reduction in light output. So now all the lights are still operating, so you still have that even distribution of light. You just have less light.
Right.
To the naked eye, I can tell you that if I'm on a field and if I'm not looking and somebody turns it down, it's hard to tell the 30 from the 15 because once your eyes adjust, and acclimate is the best word, then, I mean, the human eye is a very sophisticated device and it adjusts very quickly. So you'd have at 15, playing frisbee, I mean, absolutely, it would be a very well lit.
I'll take your word for it then. Okay, things fine.
I guess, Council, a couple of things, and Ann left, and I think she lives next to the park, but I kind of get offended at times when people say there's nobody on the field. I'll go down the field at 9:30, and there might be 4 people on the field, but they're using the field and they're doing something they love. So I think that's positive. The second thing, I didn't think we cut out. We talked about casual use, Counselor. If I'm, say, lacrosse, I never played lacrosse in my life, but if the turf is busy and I want to go down and shoot a lacrosse ball, okay, what lighting do we need? Just because it's casual doesn't mean we need more lighting. I think we're sometimes saying, well, if it's casual, they're playing frisbee. I mean, casual might mean four 5 kids going down and throwing the lacrosse ball against the net, then you need the high lighting. So I think we have to, I think it's a more complicated issue than we could do in 15 minutes. That's what I'm trying to say. And again, sometimes the turf is open and there's nobody there. Not a lot of times, but people hang out there just socially now, and that's what I love. You know, on Friday night, they get kicked out. They might just be sitting around second base. So I think, you know, we have to be a little careful and appreciative of the conversation we have. But I think Council Palumbo has it right. We you know, and I'm a recreation guy and an athletic guy, but really, we want to keep this open for our residents just to go down there and have a field open, you know, and whether they want to shoot a ball or throw a ball or do a frisbee, and I think that's important to have that open.
Do we light a turf field though, Peter, with 4 kids fooling around at one end of the field, really, with the level of lighting that's there?
Okay, let's take up the lighting on phase 1. We agreed to take that up at another point. But
Well, I think
this-
that's the nervousness here,
Okay.
Vinnie, with level of light and how much light and how long is it gonna be on? Again, it spills over into the same discussion.
But I think, I'm sensing a strategy, as it were. I threw that out there, sort of the 3 sort of types of lighting levels. And I guess what I would like to do is maybe ask Musco to go back for our next meeting. Could you put together a proposal,
He's running.
how we would, yeah, I know you won't be here, so it's been great. It's been great having you, here. But if maybe you could, put together a proposal on the poles, the location of the poles, the height of the poles, the number of fixtures, and how they would be arranged in order to achieve sort of those 3 objectives. Programming, we can talk about program later because the times are up to us, but sort of field play, at 30-foot candles, casual play at 15-foot candles, and lighting the sort of track for casual walkers, not for track meets, but casual walkers separately, from those 2. If that's, you could put together something about how that would work. And in particular, we would really, I think this is going to be really important. Again, it's going to be the same type of lighting that we were talking about at the tennis courts, but we are concerned about the arrangement of them so that, again, the glare off the property lines. And again, we got a little bit more leeway on the property lines here and here with light shining this way and this way. That we do want to minimize the spillage over the property lines, and so that's the challenge. And again, if you could even sort of bring a sketch, of the height of the pole and the estimated angle, that would be great. And so I'm going to throw that out there, and I just want to make sure that that's something the committee would want to ask Glenn and Musco to do.
And any examples of lights, sorry, Steve.
Could we say we go out and we look at, we're looking at 70 or 60-foot poles here, whatever, with the LED, I think it's another good thing to want to actually look at, because nobody's seen the LED. That's one of the issues.
Council, what about the 50%? I mean, if it's dimmable, how about if there's sometimes you want a 50%? Are they all dimmable? Could you go down from 50 to 30 to 15?
You can go.
Well, we're not, just to be clear, we're not talking about 50.
No.
We're talking maximum 30.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Why aren't we talking about 50?
Because there's no reason for it to be 50.
Even if there's lacrosse games
Even
playing
if
there?
there's lacrosse, the thing
I think that's unsafe.
the document.
We don't play lacrosse on the field, I thought we
And,
We
already.
do.
And the document from Musco.
No, we don't.
The document from Musco clearly said that for the non-spectator.
That's soccer.
Soccer, okay.
Specific.
Right. So Mike, can I ask a question? If they practice in lacrosse there, if the JV has a game there, high school or youth, what would you recommend as, not to put you on the spot, 30 or 50?
My recommendation would always, for lacrosse, would always be 50.
Thank you.
Yes, you are.
Okay, well, So,
On that day, they could have it.
okay, so,
The option is not acceptable.
okay, so Steve, you had a,
I just wanted to ask him one clarifying question. You mentioned that going from 30 to 15, you know, with the naked eye, you might not notice it, it might be a little dimmer, but the counselor had mentioned, you know, 5-foot candles for like security. Do you have a sense of what that might seem like to people? And is that-
5?
Yeah. Is that like,
No, I mean, most
background lighting?
parking lots are much less than that.
or less than
Less
5?
than- Oh, yeah. Most parking lots are around 1.5 to 2,
Okay.
and they're not very uniform at all.
Sure, yeah.
Build up underneath the poles and then.
But underneath the poles might be 1.5
Yeah,
to 2?
underneath the pole could be up to 5, even
Okay.
10, but it just, because it's like this type,
Dissipates.
it's just, there's no distribution of the light,
Right.
it's just a
Yep.
straight down, you get a circle underneath it.
So if we were looking at dimming lights for, you know, security or very minimal for the track, we could even go less than 5-foot candles, so that would still provide visibility for people.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
so and again, just follow up on that, that would sort of be to Susan's question, that if we wanted to have that track light on at a low level all night,
Not all night, please.
or
Well, I just wanna
whatever,
get a sense of-
or, yeah, but we have that, we would have the technical ability to do something.
They just do it much less than
We
5
want.
Not all night in the parking lot, you're saying?
No,
Not
just-
all night on the oval.
Oh, okay.
Come on.
But, we,
Vinny,
If
I'm
we-
gonna kill you.
no, I know, but I'm just saying, we could program that if we choose with the current
You have that
equipment.
option.
I'm not saying we want to, but I'm just saying, the capability.
Okay, I would
that-
like to say one thing to this. If we're gonna do these lights, I would like to know that we as a community can come back and readdress this lighting if it's offensive or really obnoxious. I just think we have to have the option to come back, because I'm trying to be very reasonable here, as is this community. But I think that we have to have that option with all these things, because I just see it increasing
Yes,
and
it's-
increasing and
that's good.
increasing. And we have no perception of what this is going to be, and we have a very bad experience already. So I think that's being fair.
Let's have a proposal, we trim down the phase 1 lights to 30.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
50. I think we do need to have, if we have the option of lowering the lights and raising the lights when a game is playing, then I think you need to have the 50. And it doesn't mean it's going to keep them on 50 all the time, but if there's a game that requires that kind of lighting, then you should have that lighting. And if there's a game that requires 30, you should have that. And if 15 works for the casual Frisbee player, the family wants to kick around a soccer ball, then that's fine. But if you have the technology to shift, then you should use the technology to meet the requirements of the usage, of who's using the field.
No.
wait, just hold on a second.
So what?
Yeah, hold on a second. So, I'm just gonna just ask, so, I'm just gonna ask, so it would be possible to do a design, we could do up to 50-foot candles in the field. We could program it only beyond if the field is being used for lacrosse. And if it's not being used for lacrosse, then it wouldn't be.
So can we just a little bit of revisionist, and unfortunately Jim isn't here, but the oval isn't big enough for high school lacrosse, number one. We already said.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That's what
Jim Healy said it is.
Jim Healy said it wasn't at one of the meetings here.
He did say it was.
That was the O'Connell.
That was the,
The Victory Oval is,
so, but that's the, and I'm glad we've got a lacrosse guy here, so
Yeah.
that's got, so if the field is big enough, one of the things that we decided not to put up were the nets.
the nets, correct.
And so
But
we have to kind
not
of
60
take it in
feet, maybe
sequence.
30 feet on the
We've
side.
already,
No.
but here's the thing, hold on a second.
Well, we decided to no nets and shut it down to the public.
Right.
That's what we decided.
So if that's, I don't think that is what, so maybe we just have to get, all I want, and I'm all for using as much as we can, so if it's 50, it's 50, and I know everybody's not psyched about that, if it's 30, we can adjust it, whatever. There just has to be a sequencing here, so that when we're talking about something 2 meetings ago, that it lines up with something that we talk about today. So if we're gonna play lacrosse and no nets, I just wanna make sure, Vin, I guess, is that everything lines up in sequence, right? So if we play it, that'd be fine.
I agree, but what I would like is, I guess, whether whether it's 50, whether it's
It's
30.
not 50.
It's, in terms of just in terms of what the specific technology, it could be how we program it.
Well, not so fast. The way it works is you got 100% output, 50% output, 15% output.
Okay.
That's how I got 30, 15, and 5.
Okay, so
If you go to 50, that changes the max.
Can you say that again?
10%, 50%, 15%.
And what happened to the 30?
It's of the total.
Of the total. So if you have a
Start at
50-foot
30.
candle field.
It becomes
So,
25.
yeah, so it's a different fixture if it's a 50-foot candle
Well,
fixture, or it's more lights.
More lights.
More lights.
Thank you.
So I guess, well, I would say, we don't have to decide tonight. Could you go back for the next meeting and just bring back a range of options and some specifics so
My
that
colleague will be done.
your colleague. And personally, I'm not convinced we need to go to 50 on this, but
You
let's.
can also go to 40, there's no you don't have to go 30, 50, you can go to 40 and.
But at least, let's see what we can come up for arrangements of poles and lights, and then we'll cross the bridge of what the maximum foot candle is at the next meeting, I promise.
And we'd also like a demo of that maximum foot candle.
And we're gonna get the demo, it's gonna be the same light. So
So we can.
the port, that's gonna be a 30.
Still be the same.
30, it'll be the same fixture.
Yeah, two questions.
Okay, hold on a second. Is the committee in agreement to ask for that for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Unanimous agreement. And I do, Elodia, I do, your point about we need to come back and revisit it. We will come back and revisit this again in the future, so.
We wait till the foot candles get.
Okay,
I will be quick, Bill.
okay, a couple of questions from the audience, and then we're gonna adjourn. So
This actually
Susan.
isn't, well, it's a question and a comment, but at the next meeting with parking, because I live on Bradford Road, which has a lot of pressure for parking, it would be very helpful if we are not just talking about parking that's gonna be utilized for athletic events, but also parking to address the neighborhood needs. And to my way of thinking, that, like the conversation about using different fields, it's not just looking at Victory Field in isolation as parking during winter and snowstorms, but Lowell School, the GPW lot, all the other areas, so we can have a full picture of what's available and how the Victory parking correspond or jives, so that we just, more than, don't look at this piecemeal is what I'm trying to say. I can't talk, it's too late.
Okay.
But that's my plea.
Okay, Libby.
Yeah, so I had just a couple more questions for Mike before he disappears forever from our lives. Never coming back. So one is, do I understand that whatever choice we have, it's going to be 3 level choices, not more, not fewer? If it's going to be 50 maximum, it's going to be 50, 25, and 15% of that. If it's 30, it's 30, 15, and...
Those are our standard options. If you all tell my colleague that, hey, we're kicking you out of this room unless you give us, 50, 30, and 10, we'll program it specific to your needs.
And then the other question I had was about the color of the light. Does that, with LEDs, does that change with different power levels? Because color is important.
Yep.
So, is it a different color at 50 than 30? And also, can we select the color? Because of course, blue light is not real good for you.
Yeah, the color will be standard. It's 5700 temperature, and the color CRI about 70. You're talking about a couple things. It is a little bit higher on the blue light spectrum than the current metal halide at Victory Field. One thing about the blue light once it hits green, it's pretty much dissipates. So that's a big benefit of lighting green grass. And also, street lights are where a lot of the blue light, and tablets and things like that. But because you're talking about lights that are only gonna be on a couple hundred hours a year, it's really the dark sky and others. The whole blue light thing came out of an article that was published by the AMA. That article was never peer reviewed, and there's a lot of pushback on those assumptions that were drawn. So the Dark Sky Association and the Illuminated Engineering Society of North America have both published challenges to that approach or that thinking. But it's definitely something we're aware of and tracking. And what I was told at a meeting recently was you need to stare at the sun for 15 minutes to be exposed to enough blue light to impact your sleep.
But getting back to my earlier question, there's not a difference in color when you go from 50 to 30?
Correct. Yep.
So it stays at the color, so that, because usually when you dim things, the color gets warmer, but that's not the case with the LEDs.
Correct.
Okay, I think that's the question you were trying to ask. Okay, one more question if anybody has one. Okay. No questions?
I think it was, who would go to a park that you did this.
He's going to provide us some information, so we'll be able to see.
I wonder if the committee might stay for a few minutes and look at, I don't think we're gonna include everything on the schedule. I'm concerned about not having dates and conflicting with other things that are coming down. The fall gets very busy with committee meetings and community meetings. Is it worth taking a few minutes now, or do you want to do it at the next meeting to set up some more?
Let's do now, so
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, let's let's adjourn the meeting and then just pick some more dates.
Thank you very much, Mike. Who's your colleague that we're going to torture?
So,
That's what I'm paranoid.
that's it. Thank you.